"You're useless trash, Catherine." The words hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. My mother stood at the head of the table, her face twisted with a rage I had seen building for 48 years, but never quite like this. Never this direct. Never this public. I didn't flinch. That was the strange thing. I had spent my entire life flinching at her tone, her disapproval, her silence. But in that moment, sitting at the same dining table where I had eaten countless meals while being overlooked, something different happened. I felt the words hit my chest, and instead of pain, I felt lightness, like the final thread of a fraying rope had just snapped. The smell of overcooked roast beef filled the room. Taylor's wine glass clinked against the table as she set it down, her lips curling into a satisfied smirk. Derek suddenly found his phone fascinating, scrolling through nothing. And my father, Donald, studied his mashed potatoes like they held the secrets of the universe, refusing to meet my eyes. I glanced down at the tote bag by my feet. Inside was a red folder I had been preparing for 3 weeks. 47 pages. 3 years of receipts, bank statements, and screenshots. 3 years of proof that everything they believed about me was a lie. Tonight, I would stop being invisible. But to understand why I was sitting at that table with a folder full of evidence, you need to know how I became the family ATM, and why no one ever said thank you. That Sunday dinner at my parents' colonial house in Glastonbury was supposed to be like every other, a command performance where attendance was mandatory and excuses were not accepted. I had driven 45 minutes from Hartford after working a 60-hour week, carrying a Caesar salad I had made from scratch. Homemade dressing, fresh croutons, the works. My mother greeted me at the door with her usual warmth, which is to say none at all. "You're late, and that salad looks simple." She was wearing a new cashmere sweater I didn't recognize, and I made a mental note: who paid for that? Because it certainly wasn't money from my parents' fixed income. The living room held the usual cast of characters. Taylor, my 42-year-old sister, perched on the love seat scrolling through her phone. She was wearing a new dress, I estimated at least $400, and didn't bother looking up when I entered. Derek, her husband, stood by the window nursing a drink, his body language tense and distracted. He nodded at me without making eye contact, which had become his habit lately. I knew why, but that revelation would come later. My father sat in his recliner, looking smaller and more tired than I remembered. When I approached, he reached for my hand. His grip was weak, trembling. "Katie," he said softly. "Glad you're here." He was the only person who still used my childhood nickname, and something in his voice made me pause. Was it warning? Apology? I couldn't tell. Ethan, Taylor's 16-year-old son, came downstairs and actually smiled when he saw me. "Hey, Aunt Catherine." It was the warmest greeting I received. He sat on the couch with his AirPods around his neck, watching the adults with wary eyes. He was the only one in this family who had ever apologized to me for anything. The only one who seemed to see. As I set down my tote bag by the chair I always occupied, alone on one side of the table facing the unified front of Taylor and Derek, I noticed something on the coffee table, a blue folder. Official-looking documents peeked from the edge, and I recognized the letterhead, Hartford County Real Estate Associates. My stomach tightened. Whatever they were planning, it was further along than I had anticipated. "Everyone to the table," Margaret announced with theatrical flourish. "I've made something special for this important evening." Important evening. I filed that phrase away. Dinner was served with the usual fanfare. Margaret placed the roast beef at the center of the table like she was presenting a Michelin star creation, rather than the same overcooked meat she had been making for 40 years. The mashed potatoes were lumpy. The green beans came from a can. But she acted like Julia Child unveiling a masterpiece. The conversation was forced, superficial, weather, traffic, neighborhood gossip. Taylor talked about her busy week despite having no job. Derek mentioned big deals at the car dealership despite his sales numbers being down. Margaret complimented Taylor's dress, her hair, her glow. No one asked me about my work. my life, my week. When I mentioned the possibility of a promotion, Margaret interrupted me mid-sentence. "That's nice, dear. Taylor, tell us more about that client you mentioned." The client that didn't exist, the interior design business that had never launched. But nobody questioned Taylor's fantasies. They just kept feeding them. I ate mechanically, waiting. My mind was on the red folder in my bag, the blue folder on the coffee table. 2 folders in this room, 2 different versions of the truth. Halfway through dinner, I excused myself to use the restroom. In the hallway, my father appeared, pretending to head toward the kitchen. He grabbed my arm, his voice barely above a whisper. "Katie, whatever they ask tonight, be careful." "What do you mean, Dad?" His eyes were wet, conflicted. "I know you've done more than they say. More than anyone knows. I should have..." Margaret's voice cut through from the dining room. "Donald, where did you go?" He released my arm like it was on fire. "Coming, dear." And he shuffled away without another word. I watched him retreat, his shoulders hunched with decades of defeat. He knew something, maybe everything, but he was too afraid of Margaret to speak. For the first time, I felt something other than disappointment toward my father. I felt pity. He was as trapped as I had been. The difference was, I was about to break free. After the plates were cleared, Margaret remained standing, clinking her glass like she was hosting a gala instead of a family dinner. "Now then, let's discuss why we're all here." She gestured to Taylor and Derek like a game show host presenting prizes. "Taylor and Derek have been doing some thinking about our family's future." Taylor cleared her throat, suddenly serious. "As you all know, Grandma Eleanor left us her house on Maple Lane." Left us. The lie flowed so easily from her lips. I knew the truth. That house had been transferred solely to Taylor 4 years ago, without my knowledge, based on my mother's deliberate misinterpretation of the will. But I stayed silent. Let them dig deeper. "The house has been a wonderful asset," Taylor continued, "but we think it's time to consider new options." Derek chimed in with his salesman voice. "The market is hot right now. Property values are at an all-time high." They proposed selling Grandma Eleanor's house for approximately $420,000. After fees and taxes, roughly $380,000 to split fairly among the family. Taylor made air quotes around the word fairly. But their version of fair became clear quickly. They wanted me to receive $50,000. Taylor would get $190,000. Or, and here was the real trap, I could buy Taylor's share for $250,000 to keep the house in the family. $250,000 for a house that should have been mine in the first place. Derek slid a document across the table. The blue folder. Inside was a pre-prepared agreement with my name already typed on the signature line. They had come to this dinner with paperwork ready. This wasn't a discussion. It was an ambush. "That's a lot to consider," I said, keeping my voice neutral. Taylor's smile vanished. "What's to consider? It's a great deal. I'd want to consult with a lawyer before signing anything this significant." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Margaret's face hardened. "A lawyer? We're family, Catherine." "Why do you always have to make everything so complicated?" Taylor demanded. "We're trying to do what's best for everyone," Derek added, his voice patronizing. "Don't be difficult." "You've always been like this," Margaret said, leaning forward. "Selfish, only thinking about yourself." "Selfish?" The word escaped me before I could stop it. "I've been..." Taylor cut me off. "You've never contributed to this family, not really. You just show up with your little salads and think that's enough." Derek piled on. "Your sister has a family to support. What do you have? An apartment and a cat." My father started to speak. "Now wait a minute. Donald, stay out of this," Margaret snapped. He shrank back into his chair. The brief spark in his eyes died, extinguished by 50 years of conditioning. Then I looked at the listing agreement more closely. The date jumped out at me. 3 weeks ago. "This is dated 3 weeks ago," I said quietly. The house is already listed. You've been showing it. Taylor's face flickered. Derek's smile tightened. We had to move quickly, Margaret said. The market waits for no one. And this offer pending, you've already accepted a buyer? Derek cleared his throat. We have a strong offer, $415,000. We need to respond by Friday. The truth finally surfaced. They didn't want me to buy the house. That was a decoy. They wanted me to sign away any legal claim to contest the sale. They needed my signature because somewhere, somehow, they knew the will was ambiguous. They were afraid I might challenge it. They were trying to buy my silence before I knew I had a voice. For once, they were right to be afraid. Margaret stood, palms flat on the table, her frustration boiling over. I have had enough of your attitude, Catherine. We are trying to do something good for this family, and you sit there with your silence and your suspicion. Just say what we're all thinking, Mom, Taylor interjected. Derek nodded. Exactly. It's about time. Margaret's eyes narrowed. She took a breath, and I saw it coming. The final blow. The words she had been holding back my entire life. You know what you are, Catherine? She said, her voice dripping with contempt. You're useless trash. You always have been. At least Taylor has a family, a life, a purpose. What do you have? Nothing. You're 48 years old, alone, and the only thing you're good at is hoarding money while your family struggles. The dining room went completely silent. Even the grandfather clock in the hallway seemed to stop ticking. Taylor's lips curled into a victorious smirk. Derek studied his phone. Ethan had removed his AirPods entirely, staring at his grandmother with something like horror. And my father sat frozen, fork halfway to his mouth, face drained of color. I waited for someone to say it was too far, for my father to defend me, for even Taylor to show a flicker of discomfort at the cruelty. What I got was silence, complicit, damning silence, the sound of a family choosing sides without saying a word. Something shifted inside me, not breaking. I had been broken before. This was different. This was the moment the broken pieces refused to fit back together. I felt my heartbeat slow, my breathing steady. A strange clarity descended. 48 years. I had spent 48 years being the responsible one, the strong one, the one who never needed anything from anyone. I had written checks and fixed problems and shown up to every dinner to be criticized for my salad. And this was what I was to them, useless trash. Are you finished? My voice was calm, almost gentle. Margaret blinked, thrown off. What? I asked if you were finished. I want to make sure you've said everything. Taylor rolled her eyes. We've said plenty. I nodded slowly. Good, because now it's my turn. I bent down slowly, deliberately. My hand found the tote bag by my chair. I pulled out the red folder, thick, heavy with truth, and placed it on the table with a soft thud. Margaret frowned. What is that? Taylor scoffed. Oh God, what now? Derek leaned back, suddenly wary. Donald looked up, his face draining of what little color remained. And Ethan leaned forward, like he knew something important was about to happen. I stood. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You called me useless trash, Mom. You said I've never done anything for this family. You said I just hoard money while you struggle. I placed my hand flat on the red folder. So I have to ask you something. I looked directly at Margaret. My voice was steady, clear, cutting through the silence like a blade. Then who exactly has been paying your mortgage for the last 3 years? Taylor's fork slipped from her fingers. It clattered against her plate, the sound echoing in the stunned silence. Margaret's face went white, and for the first time in 48 years, Catherine Blake had the entire room's attention. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand the weight of that folder, you need to go back 3 years. To the night my mother called me at 2 a.m. crying. That phone call was the first lie. Not because what she told me was false. The crisis was real. The lie was what she didn't tell me. What none of them ever told me. 3 years ago, I was 45 years old. Senior financial analyst at a corporate firm in Hartford. Single, stable, careful with money. The responsible daughter who never caused problems. The one they called when things fell apart. Not because they valued me, but because they knew I would fix it. I always fixed it. My phone buzzed on the nightstand at 2:14 a.m. I saw Mom on the screen and felt immediate dread pool in my stomach. Margaret never called unless she needed something. Good news could wait until morning. Bad news demanded immediate attention and immediate solutions. I answered, heart already pounding. "Mom? What's wrong?" The sobbing on the other end was barely coherent. Between gasps and hiccups, my mother's voice emerged in fragments. "Catherine, I don't know what to do. We're going to lose everything." I sat up in bed, switched on the lamp. "Slow down. What happened?" The story came out in pieces. Donald had lost his contractor business 6 months ago, something I hadn't been told. They had been managing, which in my mother's vocabulary meant ignoring the problem and hoping it would disappear. But now the mortgage was 2 months behind. The bank had sent a foreclosure warning letter. My father was falling apart, not eating, barely speaking, sitting in the dark drinking whiskey at 10 in the morning. "Your father is so ashamed," Margaret sobbed. "He won't even look at me. I don't know what to do, Catherine. I don't know how we got here." My mind was already shifting into problem-solving mode. "How much do you owe? What's the timeline? Have you talked to the bank about options?" "I can't deal with the numbers," she said, her voice suddenly small. "You know I'm not good with that." The unspoken expectation hung in the silence between us. I was good with numbers. I was good with fixing things. I was supposed to offer now without being asked directly, so she could maintain the fiction that she wasn't asking. Then her voice dropped to a whisper, soft and trembling. "You're the only one who can help us, Catherine. You're the strong one. You've always been the strong one." I had heard this my entire life. Catherine is strong. Catherine can handle it. Catherine doesn't need help. It was the story they told themselves to justify never giving me any. I never asked to be strong. I just wasn't given another option. "I'll come over tomorrow," I said. "We'll figure this out." "Thank you, sweetheart." Her voice warmed instantly. "I knew I could count on you." As I was about to hang up, I heard something in the background. Laughter, music playing, Taylor's voice, unmistakably cheerful. At 2 a.m., while our parents faced foreclosure, my sister was apparently at a party. Margaret didn't mention her younger daughter, not once during the entire call. I stared at the ceiling until dawn. Saturday morning arrived with a gray November sky that matched my mood. I pulled into my parents' driveway and saw immediately that something was wrong. The lawn was overgrown, unusual for Donald, who had always been meticulous about yard work. Paint was peeling on the shutters. The gutters sagged at the corners. These weren't signs of a recent crisis. This was neglect that had accumulated over months, maybe years. Inside was worse. The house smelled stale, like windows hadn't been opened in weeks. As Margaret led me through the hallway, I noticed things missing. The grandfather clock that had belonged to my grandmother. The silver candlesticks that used to sit on the mantel, the oil painting that had hung in the foyer since I was a child. "Mom, where's Grandma's clock?" Margaret waved dismissively. "We sold a few things, just decluttering." Decluttering. They had been selling family heirlooms to pay bills, and no one had thought to mention it. I found my father in the den, sitting in darkness. The curtains were drawn, the television off. Just sitting. A glass of whiskey sat on the table beside him, at 10 in the morning. When I entered, he looked up. His eyes were red, hollow, the eyes of a man who had lost something essential. "Katie." His voice cracked on my name. "You didn't have to come." "Yes, I did, Dad." I knelt beside his chair, took his hand. This was the man who had taught me to ride a bike, who had stayed up late helping with math homework, who had quietly slipped me $20 for gas money when I was in college. That man was disappearing into this chair, drowning in shame. Margaret led me to the kitchen table, where a cardboard box overflowed with envelopes. Many were unopened. Red stamps shouted from the pile, "Past due, final notice, urgent." I sat down and began sorting. 3 hours later, I had a complete picture of the disaster. I created a spreadsheet on my laptop, categorizing every debt, every overdue bill, every threatening letter. The mortgage was $18,400 in arrears, 2 months of payments plus late fees. Credit card number 1, in Margaret's name, carried a balance of $4,200. The joint credit card added another $3,100. Property taxes had become a lien, $2,800. Medical bills from Donald's back surgery last year totaled $6,500, most of it sent to collections. The immediate crisis alone was approximately $35,000. But the numbers weren't the worst part. As I reviewed the charges on Margaret's credit card, I found expenses that made no sense for a family facing foreclosure. Spa treatments, restaurant bills, a $600 home decor purchase, and a recurring monthly charge of $200 to something called TK Designs LLC. I didn't ask about it. Not yet. I filed it away. I had savings, enough to cover this and more. I had been careful my entire life. No fancy vacations, no designer clothes, driving the same Honda for 8 years. I saved because I always feared something like this might happen. I just didn't expect something like this to be my own parents. Once I had the full picture laid out, Margaret sat across from me. The tears were gone. In their place was something calculating, something I recognized but had never named. "So," she said, "can you help us?" What followed was a masterclass in manipulation. "Your father is so ashamed," she began. "If he had to tell people at church that we lost the house." She let the sentence trail off, letting me imagine the humiliation. "We raised you in this home, Catherine. All your memories are here. Your first steps, your high school graduation, everything. You know Taylor can't help. She has Ethan to think about, and Derek's job isn't stable. You're the successful one, Catherine. You made something of yourself. We're so proud of you." Proud. She used that word like a key, trying to unlock my wallet. I agreed to pay off the mortgage arrears. I would set up automatic transfers to cover the monthly payments until Donald found work, but I had one condition. "We need to tell Taylor," I said. "She should contribute something, even a little." Margaret's face tightened like I had suggested something obscene. "Absolutely not. Taylor has enough stress. Her marriage is difficult." "She has a child to raise. You don't understand the pressure she's under. Besides, Taylor is sensitive. This would devastate her." I looked at my mother. "And I'm not sensitive?" Her silence was my answer. It said everything her words never would. I agreed to keep it secret, for now. I told myself it was to protect my father's dignity. Deep down, I knew the truth. Fighting Margaret was exhausting, and I had been trained since childhood to keep the peace, even at my own expense. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You've always been our rock, Catherine. Taylor is, well, she's more delicate. She needs to be protected. You understand?" I nodded, but my mind was churning. Protected from what? From reality? From consequences? From ever having to grow up? I wrote the first check that afternoon. Set up the payment plan with the bank. $6,200 per month for 3 months to clear the arrears, then regular mortgage payments ongoing. I adjusted my own budget. No more dinners out, cancel the gym membership, postpone the bathroom renovation I had been planning. It was fine. I could handle it. I was strong. Driving home that evening, memories surfaced unbidden. The pattern had been there my whole life. I just never had a name for it. Age 8. My birthday party was canceled because Taylor threw a tantrum about something. We spent the day at her favorite park instead. Age 12. I won an essay contest, but the family skipped the award ceremony because Taylor had a dance recital the same night. Nobody suggested we split up, half going to each event. Age 16. I got accepted to UConn with a scholarship. At dinner that night, Margaret spent 20 minutes discussing Taylor's homecoming dress. I was never the strong one. I was the one they didn't bother to take care of. Strong was just another word for neglected. The daughter who never complained, so they assumed she never needed anything. This is just temporary, I told myself, merging onto the highway. Dad will find work. They'll get back on their feet. Once they're stable, I'll step back. Family helps family. This is what you do. 3 years later, I would still be telling myself the same lies. 2 days after my visit, Taylor called. This was unusual. My sister rarely reached out unless she needed something. Her voice was bright, cheerful, completely oblivious. "Hey sis, how are you? It's been forever." We made small talk for 5 minutes. She complained about Ethan's school, about Derek working late, about a neighbor who didn't maintain their lawn. Normal sister conversation, if you didn't know what I now knew. Then she got to the point. "So, I have this amazing opportunity. A client wants me to design their lake house. Huge project. Very prestigious." "That sounds great, Taylor. The thing is, I need to put down a deposit for materials. Just $500. I'll pay you back next month, I promise." My grip tightened on the phone. "Taylor, have you talked to Mom and Dad lately?" "Oh, you know how they are. Mom's always complaining about something." "They didn't mention anything about money problems?" Taylor laughed. It was the laugh of someone who had never worried about money in her life. "Mom and Dad? Please, they're fine. Dad's just being dramatic about retiring." She didn't know. Margaret hadn't told her a thing. While I was restructuring my entire budget to save their parents' house, Taylor was asking me for $500 for a client who probably didn't exist. I transferred the money anyway. It was easier than arguing, easier than explaining, easier than confronting the unfairness that was so baked into this family that no one even noticed it anymore. "Thanks, sis. You're the best." That was the first 500. Over the next 3 years, there would be many more. And not once, not a single time, did anyone say thank you. Margaret's face at the dinner table 3 years later was still frozen in shock. Taylor's fork lay on her plate where it had fallen. The question I had asked hung in the air like a blade. Who exactly has been paying your mortgage for the last 3 years? But the $500 here and there wasn't enough for them. The requests got bigger. The lies got more elaborate. And I kept paying, kept believing I was helping, kept hoping that someday they would see what I was sacrificing. By the end of the first year, I had given them over $15,000. By the end of the second year, the total exceeded $32,000. And the worst part? I still thought I was helping. I didn't know then that while I was paying their mortgage, they were telling Taylor a very different story. A story where I was the selfish sister who never helped with anything. A story where I was too wrapped up in my career to care about family. A story where every Sunday dinner I missed because I was working overtime to afford their lifestyle was proof that I didn't love them. I was the villain in a narrative I didn't even know existed, but I was about to find out. 6 months into the arrangement, I sat at my desk at 7 in the evening, office empty, spreadsheet open on my screen. I was tracking 2 sets of finances now, my own and my parents'. The mortgage was current. The immediate crisis had passed. But the bleeding hadn't stopped. It had just slowed to a steady, manageable hemorrhage. Every month I transferred money I would never see again. I had adjusted my lifestyle to accommodate this new reality. Lunch from home instead of the cafe downstairs. No new clothes unless something wore out completely. Streaming services canceled. The thermostat set 2 degrees lower in winter. My co-workers thought I was just frugal. They didn't know I was supporting 2 households on 1 salary. I was tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. It was the tiredness of carrying something invisible, something no one acknowledged. No one saw the weight. No one offered to help carry it, because no one knew it existed. The first 6 months were manageable, I told myself. Temporary, but that's the thing about patterns. They don't announce themselves. They creep in slowly, take root quietly, until one day you realize you're trapped in a maze you built with your own hands. Month 7 brought the first credit card emergency. Margaret called, her voice tight with stress. Catherine, there's been a mistake. The credit card company is saying we owe $3,800. I don't understand how this happened. I pulled up the account on my computer. I had the login credentials now, for monitoring purposes. The charges painted a clear picture. A weekend at a bed and breakfast, new patio furniture, a $400 wellness consultation, and various smaller purchases that added up quickly. Mom, these aren't mistakes. These are purchases. We needed to relax. Her voice turned defensive, then wounded. Your father's depression is affecting me too, Catherine. The stress is unbearable. Don't I deserve some peace? I paid the balance. What else could I do? Month 9 brought Taylor's car situation. Her SUV broke down, and Derek declared it totaled without ever getting a mechanic's opinion. I suspected he simply didn't want to pay for repairs. Taylor needed a new car to drive Ethan to school and meet clients. The clients I had never seen evidence of. The interior design business that existed only in her Instagram bio. Margaret called on Taylor's behalf. Can you help with the down payment? Just $2,500. She'll pay you back, I promise. I knew Taylor would never pay me back. The words pay you back had become a family joke that no one found funny except them. I transferred the money anyway. Month 11 brought the property tax surprise. A letter arrived at my parents' house. I was receiving copies of their mail now, another task I had absorbed, informing them that property taxes were delinquent. A lien would be placed on the house if not paid within 30 days. Amount due, $4,200. I hadn't known property taxes weren't included in the mortgage payment. No one had thought to mention it. Or they had, and chose not to. That night I started a document on my computer. Just for myself. Just to see the numbers clearly. 6 months in, I had given them $22,400. The number made me physically ill. While reviewing the credit card statements that month, I noticed something I had filed away earlier. Margaret was making monthly payments of $200 to TK Designs LLC, the same mysterious company I had seen in the original pile of bills. My curiosity finally won. I searched for it online. The registered agent was Taylor Marie Kensington. My mother was paying Taylor a monthly salary for a business that had no website, no portfolio, no evidence of any actual clients or projects. $200 a month, funded by money I was providing. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I highlighted the entries in my spreadsheet and kept scrolling. The promotion offer came 4 months later. My boss called me into his office with a smile I had learned to recognize. Good news. Catherine, we want to promote you, Vice President of Financial Analysis. My heart leaped. This was everything I had worked toward for 15 years. The title, the recognition, the validation that my competence mattered. Then came the condition. There's one catch. The position is in our New York office. You'd need to relocate. New York. Higher salary, bigger title, the career advancement I had earned years ago. But also, higher cost of living, 3 hours from my parents, harder to monitor their finances, impossible to drop everything and drive to Glastonbury when the next crisis hit. If I left, who would catch the problems before they became catastrophes? If I left, who would my mother call at 2 a.m? I mentioned the opportunity to Margaret casually, testing the waters. New York? Her voice sharpened immediately. That's so far. What about Sunday dinners? What if your father has another health scare? You'd be hours away. Family has to come first, Catherine. That's what matters in the end. No congratulations. No, what a wonderful opportunity. Just guilt, applied with surgical precision. I declined the promotion. I told my boss it wasn't the right time for personal reasons. He looked disappointed but understanding. I walked back to my desk and stared at my computer screen for 20 minutes, unseeing. I didn't cry. I wasn't sure I remembered how. I told myself I was being responsible, putting family first. But here's what I couldn't admit. I was afraid. Afraid of what would happen if I wasn't there to fix things. Afraid of the guilt they would pile on me. Afraid of being the daughter who abandoned her parents. So I abandoned myself instead. I met Carol in a hospital waiting room, month 14. My father had a cardiac scare. Severe anxiety presenting as chest pain, though we didn't know that for 6 terrifying hours. I sat alone in the ER waiting area, watching the clock, waiting for news. Margaret was with Donald. Taylor couldn't get away. Ethan had soccer practice. A woman about my age sat down nearby. Scrubs, tired eyes, kind face, clearly medical staff on a break. She noticed my hands shaking, the untouched coffee growing cold, the 1,000-yard stare I had perfected. "Rough night?" she asked. I laughed bitterly. "Rough year." Something about her openness, her lack of judgment, made me start talking. I told her everything: the mortgage, the credit cards, the promotion I had turned down, the sister who asked for money while posting vacation photos. Carol listened without interrupting, without offering empty platitudes. When I finally stopped, she was quiet for a long moment. "Can I tell you something?" she said. 10 years ago, I was you." Carol had spent a decade supporting her husband's family, his parents, his brother's kids. She paid for everything, fixed everything, was the responsible one everyone relied on. "You know how they thanked me?" she said. "When I finally stopped, they called me selfish. My own husband sided with them." "What happened?" "I lost the marriage. But I got myself back." She leaned toward me, her voice firm but gentle. "You're not helping them, Catherine. You're enabling them. Every time you fix a problem they created, you teach them they don't have to change, they don't have to grow up, they don't have to face consequences. But they're my family. And they will drain you dry, not because they're evil, because you're letting them. Because it's easier to take from you than to fix themselves." She gave me her phone number. "When you're ready to stop drowning, call me." I put the number in my phone but didn't call. Not yet. I wasn't ready to admit she might be right, but her words echoed in my head for months. "You're not helping them. You're enabling them." Month 16. Sunday dinner at my parents' house. I arrived early, unusual for me, but traffic had been light. The front door was unlocked, so I let myself in. Voices drifted from the kitchen. Margaret and Taylor mid-conversation. I froze in the hallway, hidden by the wall. "I just don't understand why we have to keep asking Catherine," Taylor was saying. "She acts like it's such a burden." "Oh, you know how she is." Margaret's voice dripped with dismissal. "Dramatic. She has a good job, no kids, no expenses. She can afford it." "Derek thinks she's judging us, like she's better than everyone because she has money. Just let her play the martyr. As long as the check's clear, who cares?" They laughed. Both of them, laughing together. At me. The woman who was keeping their lives afloat was a joke to them. My hand gripped the wall. My vision blurred. Something cracked inside my chest, not breaking but shifting, rearranging. I took a breath, composed myself, walked into the kitchen with a smile plastered on my face. "Sorry I'm early. Traffic was good." Margaret and Taylor's expressions transformed instantly, warm, welcoming, as if the conversation I had just overheard had never happened. "Catherine, perfect timing. Can you set the table?" I set the table. I ate dinner. I laughed at my father's jokes. I complimented Margaret's cooking and asked Taylor about her projects. Inside, something fundamental had shifted. That was the moment I started keeping records. Not to confront them. Not yet. But because I finally understood, I wasn't family to them. I was a resource. And resources get used up and discarded. Month 18. Another property tax bill. Another $4,000. I transferred the money on a Tuesday, right before the deadline. That week, I ate ramen for dinner every night to balance my budget. On Friday, my phone buzzed with an Instagram notification. Taylor had posted a new photo. She and Derek were on a beach. Cancun, Mexico, matching sunglasses, tropical drinks with little umbrellas, perfect tans. The caption read, "Sometimes you just need to escape. Self-care isn't selfish." Blessed va in vacation mode. Ba living my best life. I stared at the photo for a full minute. A week in Cancun, easily $3,000 to $5,000. The property tax I had just paid, $4,000. The SUV down payment I had given Taylor 6 months earlier, $2,500. Derek's supposedly unstable job apparently stable enough for international travel. I took a screenshot, added it to my growing file. I didn't comment. I didn't confront. But I stopped believing the lies they told me about their circumstances. That night, I opened my tracking document and created a new column. What they told me versus what actually happened. The first entry. Taylor can't contribute because Derek's job is unstable. Reality, Cancun vacation posted same week I paid $4,000 in property tax. The document would eventually grow to 47 pages. Month 20 brought the discovery that finally broke something in me. I stopped by my parents' house to drop off groceries. Margaret had forgotten to shop, and Donald shouldn't be driving with his anxiety medication. On the mantel in the living room, displayed prominently, I noticed a card I hadn't seen before. Curious, I picked it up and read it. It was a thank you card from Margaret to Taylor. Inside, she had written, "To my darling Taylor, thank you for always being there for this family. Your support means the world. We couldn't do this without you. Love, Mom." Dated last week. Taylor's support? In the last 20 months, Taylor had contributed exactly $0 to our parents' situation. She had received the car down payment, the monthly salary for her fake business, countless small loans that were never repaid. And Margaret was thanking her for being there? This wasn't just favoritism. This was a rewritten history. Margaret had created a narrative where Taylor was the supportive daughter, the one who cared, the one who showed up. And Catherine didn't exist in that story. Or worse, Catherine was the villain, the selfish one, the one who hoarded money while her family struggled. I put the card back exactly where I had found it, left the groceries on the counter, drove home in silence. That night, I called Carol for the first time. She answered on the second ring. "I was wondering when you'd call." My voice came out hoarse, cracked. "I think I'm drowning." "Then stop swimming toward people who are holding your head underwater." I didn't respond. The words were too heavy, too true. Carol continued, her voice gentle but firm. "Start documenting everything. Dates, amounts, receipts. Not to use against them, not yet. But so you can see the truth clearly. It's harder to lie to yourself when the numbers are staring back at you." That night, I organized everything. Bank statements, screenshots, receipts, all transferred into a folder on my computer. I labeled it Family Support Tracking. Later, I would rename it Evidence. By the end of year 2, I had given them over $32,000. I had documented every cent, every request, every lie they told me about their circumstances while spending money they didn't have on luxuries I couldn't afford. But the worst discovery was still ahead, the one that would show me just how deep the betrayal went. It started with my 47th birthday, the birthday that no one remembered, and ended with an email I was never supposed to see about a house I didn't know my sister owned. I woke on the morning of October 15th to autumn light streaming through my bedroom window. My 47th birthday. I lay still for a moment, allowing myself a small, fragile hope. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe someone would remember. I reached for my phone on the nightstand and checked for notifications. No missed calls, no text messages. I scrolled through what had arrived overnight. Work emails, a sale notification from Target, my credit card statement reminder. Nothing from Margaret, nothing from Donald, nothing from Taylor. It was 8:47 a.m. Still early, I told myself. They might call later. I showered, dressed, made coffee. I had taken the day off work, a rare indulgence I almost never allowed myself. I had vague plans. Maybe treat myself to lunch at that Italian place I'd been wanting to try. Visit the bookstore downtown, buy myself something nice. But mostly, if I was being honest, I had hoped someone else would make plans for me. By noon, my phone remained silent. I texted the family group chat. "Hey everyone, how's your week going?" 3 hours passed. No response. I made myself a sandwich and ate it standing over the sink, watching the October clouds drift past my window. I want to tell you I didn't care. That birthdays stopped mattering somewhere in my 30s, that I had outgrown the need for acknowledgement. But that would be a lie. 47 years old, and I was still that little girl waiting for someone to notice she existed. By 6 in the evening, I accepted the truth. No one was coming. No one was calling. I refused to sit home feeling sorry for myself. I put on a nice dress, one I had bought 2 years ago and never worn because there was never an occasion, and drove to an upscale restaurant downtown. The kind of place I never went because I was always saving money. Tonight I was spending money on myself, for once. The hostess looked up with a practiced smile. "Table for how many?" "Just one." "Just one tonight?" The pity in her eyes was barely concealed. The way she said "just" made it sound like a diagnosis. She seated me near the window. I watched couples lean toward each other over candlelight, families laughing at inside jokes, friends clinking glasses in celebration. The normal life I had somehow missed while I was busy paying everyone else's bills. I ordered a glass of expensive wine, then another. The waiter was kind, attentive, probably sensing the particular loneliness of someone dining alone on what was clearly a significant evening. My phone rang at 6:42 p.m. Margaret's name lit up the screen. My heart leaped despite everything. I answered, forcing my voice to stay neutral. "Hi, Mom." "Catherine, I need you to pick up Dad's prescription tomorrow. The pharmacy closes at 6 and I have my book club." I waited. Surely the birthday wish was coming. A pause for dramatic effect, then, "Happy birthday, sweetheart." Any second now. "Hello? Did you hear me?" "Yes, Mom. I'll pick it up." "Good. Oh, and remind me to tell you about Taylor's exciting news. But I have to run. Book club!" The line went dead. I stared at my phone. The call had lasted 47 seconds. The same number as my age. I almost laughed at the cosmic joke. The waiter appeared with a small chocolate cake, a single candle flickering on top. "I didn't order this." He smiled gently. "I know, you looked like you needed it." I tipped him 40% and ate every bite alone. That night, I made myself a promise. I would never again wait for them to remember me. If I wanted to be celebrated, I would celebrate myself. But I wasn't ready to stop hoping entirely. That would take a few more months. 3 weeks after my forgotten birthday, Margaret called with unusual excitement. "Catherine, we're having a special family gathering this Saturday. Taylor has wonderful news." "What kind of news?" "She wants to announce it herself. You must be there. It's very important to your sister." I rearranged my weekend plans, a quiet trip to the farmer's market I had been looking forward to, without protest. I had been trained well. When I arrived at my parents' house, the transformation was startling. Fairy lights draped the living room, candles flickered on every surface. A banner stretched across the wall. "Congratulations, Taylor!" Taylor stood in the center of the room, glowing with self-importance. She wore a new outfit I estimated at $500 minimum. Derek hovered nearby, looking uncomfortable. I noted his body language, the way he kept checking his phone. Ethan sat on the couch, clearly forced to attend, absorbed in his video game. Margaret clapped her hands for attention. "Everyone, Taylor has an announcement." Taylor cleared her throat with theatrical gravity. "I've been keeping a secret. For months I've been working on something special." She unveiled a display table I hadn't noticed. Mason jars filled with candles in various colors. Lavender, vanilla, something labeled Ocean Breeze. "I'm launching my own business, handcrafted luxury candles. I'm calling it Taylor's Glow." Margaret applauded like Taylor had just announced she was curing cancer. Donald nodded politely. Derek stared at his phone. Taylor launched into a rehearsed pitch about following her passion and market research and target demographics and influencer partnerships. She spoke like a contestant on a business reality show, using words she had clearly memorized without understanding. I listened, mentally calculating. Taylor had no business experience, No marketing background, no track record of completing anything she started. But she was presenting this like she was the next Martha Stewart. Then came the pivot I had been waiting for. Taylor's voice softened, became vulnerable. There's just one small obstacle. To do this right, to really make it work, I need startup capital. The room seemed to lean toward me. The equipment, the supplies, the website, the packaging, it's about $15,000. Everyone looked at Catherine. Of course they did. Margaret reached over and squeezed my hand. We're all so proud of Taylor for following her dreams. Family supports family, right? The touch felt like a transaction, a down payment on guilt. I noticed Taylor hadn't made eye contact with me once during the entire presentation. The pressure came from all directions. Taylor's eyes filled with practiced tears. I've done all the work. I just need someone to believe in me. Margaret nodded gravely. This could be Taylor's future, Catherine, her independence. Donald cleared his throat. It would be nice to see Taylor settled. Even Derek contributed. It's a solid business plan. I've looked at the numbers. I doubted Derek had looked at anything except his phone in months. For the first time in my life, I didn't immediately agree. That's a significant amount, Taylor. Have you looked into small business loans? Her face flickered with annoyance. Banks don't understand creative businesses. What about investors? There are programs for women entrepreneurs. Margaret cut me off sharply. Catherine, why are you making this difficult? Taylor's tears increased on cue. I knew you wouldn't support me. You never have. Your sister has a family to feed, Margaret said, her voice rising. What do you have? A job and an apartment. You can afford this. Think about Ethan, Derek added. If this business succeeds, it helps the whole family. It's an investment, really, Taylor sniffed. I'll pay you back with interest. I had heard pay you back before. It had never happened, not once. I looked at my father. Donald's eyes were apologetic but silent. He wouldn't defend me. He never did. I need to think about it, I said. $15,000 is a lot of money. The room went silent. Actual gasps. You would have thought I had announced I was joining a cult. Think about it? Taylor's tears evaporated instantly. You'd make me wait? Margaret stood, her face contorting with fury. I can't believe you're being so selfish, after everything we've done for you. I gathered my purse to leave. As I stood, movement caught my eye. Ethan had looked up from his video game. He caught my gaze and mouthed something. It took me a moment to understand. I'm sorry. He was 16 years old, and he was the only person in that room who saw what was happening. The text messages started before I reached my car. Margaret, I raised you better than this. Margaret, Taylor is devastated. Margaret, call me immediately. Taylor, thanks for humiliating me in front of everyone. Taylor, Derek thinks you're jealous of our family. Taylor, some sister you are. Margaret, your father is very disappointed in you. 7 messages in 10 minutes, each one a carefully aimed arrow. I sat on my couch that night, reading them over and over. The familiar voices in my head competed for attention. You're being selfish. They need you. What's $15,000 compared to family? I thought about Christmas, Thanksgiving, every future gathering, the cold shoulders, the passive-aggressive comments, the suffocating silence, the price of saying no. At 11 p.m., I called Margaret. I'll do it. I'll give Taylor the money. Her voice warmed instantly. Oh, Catherine, I knew you'd come around. You always do. I'll transfer it tomorrow. Make it Monday. Taylor wants to start ordering supplies right away. Monday morning, I transferred $15,000 to Taylor's account, the largest single amount I had ever given them. Her response came an hour later, a text message, 4 characters long. Got it. The X. Not, thank you so much, Catherine. Not, I really appreciate this. Not, I won't let you down. Got it. Bex. 4 characters of gratitude for $15,000. 3 months later, I asked Margaret about the candle business. How's Taylor's Glow coming along? Has she launched yet? Margaret's response was vague. Oh, you know Taylor, she's so busy. Busy with what? I thought the business was her priority. She changed the subject. I searched online for Taylor's Glow. Nothing. No website, no Instagram account, no Etsy shop. I checked Taylor's personal social media. Plenty of posts. Brunch with friends, shopping hauls, date nights with Derek. Not a single candle in sight. At the next Sunday dinner, I asked Taylor directly, How's the candle business? I'd love to see your website. Her smile tightened. It's in development. These things take time. It's been 3 months. What have you been working on? Derek interjected. She's doing market research. You wouldn't understand. Taylor nodded. Not everyone rushes into things, Catherine. Some of us are strategic. Later that evening, while helping Margaret clear the table, I noticed a shopping bag by the back door. Nordstrom. I glanced inside. A designer handbag, tags still attached. $1,200. That was 8% of the business capital sitting in a shopping bag. I took a photo with my phone. Evidence. The candle business never existed. I don't mean it failed. I mean it was never real. The supplies were never ordered. The website was never built. $15,000 had become shopping trips and spa days, and that handbag by the door. And I had paid for all of it. A few weeks later, I arrived early for Sunday dinner again. Only Ethan was in the living room, homework spread across the coffee table. We made small talk. His classes, his friends, his college plans. He was guarded at first, the way teenagers are with adults they don't trust. But slowly he opened up. I mentioned I had been working extra hours lately. Ethan snorted. That's what Mom says about you. My radar activated. What does your mom say about me? He hesitated, realizing he had said too much. Nothing, just, I don't know, actually. Tell me. He shifted uncomfortably on the couch. She says you're, super rich, that you don't need to worry about money. What else? She says you're selfish because you don't help the family more. The words landed like punches. Anything else? And Grandma says... He trailed off. Says what? Grandma says you owe them, because they raised you. He looked up, guilty and conflicted. I don't think that's true. You're not selfish. I kept my face neutral, but inside I was reeling. Thank you, Ethan. That means a lot. Can I tell you something? I leaned closer. I'm not rich. I just work hard and save. And I do help. More than anyone knows. Ethan nodded slowly, processing. I figured. Mom always makes stuff up. From that day forward, Ethan treated me differently. Small things. Saving me a seat at dinner, asking about my week, defending me when Taylor made snide comments. He was the only one in the family who saw me clearly. I met Carol for coffee at our regular spot, a quiet cafe in West Hartford. I told her about the candle business, the $15,000, the nothing that came of it. She stirred her latte slowly, listening without judgment. You know what you're dealing with, right? A spoiled sister and enabling parents? Carol shook her head. Parasites, that's the word. You're the host organism. They've built their entire lifestyle around extracting resources from you. And they've created a story where you're the bad guy, so they never have to feel guilty. Carol. Catherine, I've seen this before. With families like this, there are only 2 outcomes. She held up 2 fingers. Either you cut them off completely and save yourself, or they drain you until there's nothing left. Your money, your time, your health, your soul. There has to be a middle ground, some way to set boundaries. There is no middle ground, no compromise they'll respect. You have to choose. I stared into my coffee. They're my family. I can't just abandon them. Carol's eyes were sad but firm. Honey, they abandoned you a long time ago. You just haven't accepted it yet. I left that conversation shaken. Carol was right. I knew she was right. But knowing and accepting are different things. It would take one more discovery, one final betrayal, to push me over the edge. And that discovery was waiting for me in my father's email inbox, in a message about property deeds and family trusts that I was never supposed to see. It started with a computer problem. It ended with the revelation that while I had been paying their mortgage, sacrificing my future, giving up my promotion, my mother had quietly transferred my grandmother's house to Taylor. 4 years ago. Without telling me, without asking me, without so much as a whisper that my grandmother had left anything to anyone. The house that should have been mine. My phone rang at 9 on a Saturday morning. Donald's name appeared on the screen, and I felt the familiar mix of love and exhaustion that came with any contact from my family. "Katie, I need your help." His voice was frustrated, embarrassed. "The computer is doing something strange." I had become the family IT department somewhere along the way, another role I had absorbed without being asked. "What's it doing, Dad?" "I don't know. There are pop-ups everywhere, and I can't find my email. Everything's just wrong." I sighed internally. I had been planning to try a yoga class that morning, something Carol had recommended for stress. Another small pleasure sacrificed at the altar of family obligation. "I'll be there in an hour, Dad." The drive to Glastonbury took 45 minutes. 45 minutes to think about the fact that Taylor lived 15 minutes from our parents and was never asked to help with anything. 45 minutes to wonder why I kept showing up when no one ever showed up for me. But Donald had asked for me specifically. That still meant something, even if I couldn't explain why. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed both cars were gone. Margaret's sedan and Taylor's SUV. Only my father's old truck sat in the garage, unused since he'd stopped driving regularly. The house was quiet in a way it rarely was when Margaret was home. No television blaring her favorite talk shows, no phone conversations conducted at full volume, just silence. Donald met me at the door looking sheepish. "Thanks for coming, Katie. I know you're busy." "It's fine, Dad." It wasn't fine, but the words came automatically. His desktop computer was a mess, infected with adware from clicking some suspicious link, browser hijacked, pop-ups multiplying like rabbits. A simple fix, but my father watched me work like I was performing surgery, marveling at each click and keystroke. "You're so smart, Katie. I never understood these machines." While the antivirus scan ran, we sat together in his den. He offered me coffee, and I accepted. For a few minutes we just talked. About the weather, about the garden he was trying to maintain, about a history book he was reading. Normal conversation, the kind we rarely had anymore. I noticed things as we talked. His hands trembled slightly when he lifted his cup. He had lost weight since I'd last really looked at him. The den was messier than usual. Papers scattered across his desk, bills stacked haphazardly, the organized chaos of a man losing his grip. "Dad, are you okay? Really okay?" He looked at me for a long moment. Something flickered in his eyes, a struggle, a decision being weighed. "Katie, He stopped, swallowed hard. "There are things I should have told you. Things I should have done differently." My heart rate increased. "What things, Dad?" He opened his mouth to speak. The front door opened. Margaret's voice cut through the house like a blade. "Donald, whose car is in the driveway?" The moment shattered. My father's face closed like a door slamming shut. Whatever he had been about to tell me retreated behind walls I would never breach. "Never mind," he said quietly. "It's nothing. Thank you for fixing the computer." Margaret entered the den, her presence immediately dominating the space. "Catherine, what a nice surprise. Helping your father with his technology troubles?" "Just clearing some malware." "So nice of you to come all this way. Taylor is so busy with Ethan's activities, you know." I caught my father's expression as Margaret spoke. It wasn't relief at his wife's return. It was fear. Donald Blake was afraid of his own wife. How long had this been true? How had I never seen it before? I turned back to the computer to finish the cleanup. Margaret hovered, making small talk I didn't want, while my mind raced with questions I couldn't ask. I was clearing the last of the browser tabs when a notification popped up in the corner of the screen. An email alert. Subject: RE, transfer of property deed, Blake Family Trust. Sender: Henderson and Associates, attorneys at law. My finger froze over the mouse. This was my father's private email. I had no right to read it. But Blake Family Trust. That would include me, wouldn't it? And property deed. What property? The only real estate the family owned was this house and Grandma Eleanor's house, the rental property on Maple Lane that had been in the family for decades. Margaret was in the kitchen now, making noise with dishes. Donald had shuffled off to the bathroom. I had maybe 2 minutes alone. My hand moved before my conscience could stop it. I clicked. The email was a reply in a longer thread. I scrolled quickly, scanning the conversation from the beginning. The original message was dated 4 years ago. 4 years. The language was legal, formal, but the meaning was clear. Transfer of deed as per Margaret Blake's instructions. The property address: 47 Maple Lane, Glastonbury, Connecticut. Grandma Eleanor's house. The new owner listed on the deed: Taylor Marie Kensington. I read the words 3 times. They didn't change. Taylor owned Grandma Eleanor's house. Had owned it for 4 years. While I had been paying the family's bills, sacrificing my savings, turning down promotions, eating ramen to make ends meet, my sister had been sitting on a property worth nearly $400,000. And no one had told me. I heard the toilet flush. Donald would be back any second. Moving quickly, I forwarded the entire email thread to my own address. Then I deleted the forwarded message from the sent folder, erasing my tracks. My hands were shaking, but my mind was razor sharp. Before closing, I searched Donald's email for related messages. Eleanor, property, deed, trust. More emails surfaced. A treasure trove of family secrets I was never supposed to see. I forwarded 3 more, deleted the evidence, and closed the browser just as Donald's footsteps approached. All fixed, Dad. You should be good now. He thanked me without meeting my eyes. Margaret called from the kitchen, inviting me to stay for lunch. I made an excuse about work and left as quickly as I could. The drive home was a blur. My mind kept circling back to what I'd seen. Grandma Eleanor had died 5 years ago. I was at the funeral. I gave the eulogy. I held Margaret's hand while she cried. Real tears or performance, I still couldn't say. Afterward, Margaret had collected all the paperwork. "I'll handle the boring legal stuff," she had said. "You girls don't need to worry about the details." I hadn't questioned it. I was grieving. I trusted my mother. At home, I opened the forwarded emails on my laptop. The full picture emerged in sickening detail. Grandma Eleanor had left a will. The house on Maple Lane was to go to the granddaughter who demonstrates care for the family. Ambiguous language, open to interpretation. But Margaret, as executor, had made the interpretation herself. She decided it meant Taylor. The transfer was completed quietly, without my knowledge, without any discussion, without even the pretense of fairness. One email stood out from the rest. It was from the lawyer handling the estate, expressing concern about the process. Mrs. Blake, the will's language is ambiguous. Both granddaughters could arguably qualify under the stated criteria. Are you certain you don't want to discuss this with Catherine before proceeding? It might prevent future complications. Margaret's reply was 3 words. Proceed as instructed. 3 words that erased me from my grandmother's legacy. I went to the Glastonbury property records online. Public information, available to anyone. 47. Maple Lane, transferred from the Eleanor Blake estate to Taylor Marie Kensington. Date of transfer, 4 years and 3 months ago. Value at time of transfer, $342,000. The current market value was closer to $400,000. The puzzle pieces clicked into place. Around the same time as the transfer, I remembered Taylor suddenly having money for a down payment on her current house. She'd bought a new car, supposedly a gift from Derek's bonus. She started the spending habits that had never stopped. It wasn't Derek's bonus. It wasn't savings. It was the rental income from Grandma's house. Every month, that property generated at least $2,000. For 4 years, Taylor had been collecting approximately $24,000 a year, possibly more, while crying poor and asking me for money, while I paid the property taxes on our parents' house, while I funded her fake candle business, while I gave up my promotion to stay close to a family that was robbing me blind. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running calculations, trying to process the scope of what I'd discovered. Then I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. After Grandma Eleanor's funeral, Margaret had distributed keepsakes from the estate. Taylor received Grandma's pearl necklace, worth thousands, a family heirloom. I received a small wooden jewelry box. "Mother wanted you to have this," Margaret had said dismissively, handing it to me like an afterthought. "There's some old papers inside, recipes or something." I had tucked it away in my closet and never looked at it again. I was grieving. Old recipes didn't seem important. At 2 a.m, I got out of bed and dug through my closet until I found it. The wooden box, dusty and forgotten, wedged behind old yearbooks and winter clothes. Inside were what I expected. Faded photographs, a dried flower pressed between tissue paper, handwritten recipe cards in my grandmother's elegant script. But at the bottom, beneath everything else, was an envelope, yellowed with age, my name written on the front in shaky but unmistakable handwriting. Catherine. My hands trembled as I opened it. "My dearest Catherine, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I want you to know something important. I've watched you your whole life. I've seen how hard you work, how much you give, how little you ask for. You are the heart of this family, even if they don't see it. Even if they never say it. I've made provisions. The house on Maple Lane is meant for you, for the one who truly cares for this family. Don't let your mother convince you otherwise. She has her own ideas about who deserves what. But I know the truth. I've always known. I love you, sweetheart, more than I ever said, more than you probably knew. Grandma Eleanor." At the bottom of the letter, in smaller writing, was a postscript. "P.S. The lawyer has a copy of my true wishes. His name is Richard Holloway. If something seems wrong, find him." I sat on my bedroom floor, surrounded by evidence of a betrayal I was only beginning to understand. The forwarded emails, the property records, my grandmother's letter. I created a timeline. 5 years ago. Grandma Eleanor dies, leaves house to the granddaughter who cares for the family. 4 years ago. Margaret transfers the deed to Taylor, ignoring Eleanor's clear intent, ignoring the lawyer's concerns, ignoring me entirely. 3 years ago, I start paying the family's debts, unaware I've been written out of my grandmother's legacy. Present. Taylor owns a property worth nearly $400,000, while I fund the family's lifestyle with money I can't afford to give. The scope of the theft was staggering. The house itself, $380,000 or more, 4 years of rental income, approximately $96,000. Money I had given the family directly, $47,000 and counting. Over $500,000 in wealth that should have been mine, or at least partially mine, had been funneled to Taylor while I sacrificed everything. But it wasn't just about money. My grandmother had seen me, had valued me, had tried to protect me from beyond the grave, and my mother had intercepted that protection and handed it to the daughter who already had everything. My father, did he know? That email was in his inbox. He must have seen it. Had he let this happen? Had he watched Margaret steal my inheritance and said nothing? Everything I believed about my family was a lie. Something fundamental shifted in my chest that night. Not breaking, hardening. The guilt that had governed my entire life suddenly felt absurd. I had been apologizing for existing while they were stealing my future. The next morning I called Carol. "I found something," I said. My voice was flat, calm, dangerously calm. Something bad. Tell me." I explained everything. The emails, the property records, my grandmother's letter. Carol listened in complete silence. When I finished, she asked, "What do you want to do?" "I don't know yet. I need to think." "Are you going to confront them?" "Not yet. They'll just lie. They'll gaslight me, make me feel crazy, turn it around somehow. That's what they always do." "Then what?" I paused, feeling the weight of the decision forming. "I'm going to find out everything, every lie, every dollar, every secret, and then I'm going to decide what to do with the truth." "Your grandmother mentioned a lawyer, Richard Holloway." "I'm going to find him. I need to know exactly what she intended." Carol's voice was gentle but firm. "Get documentation. Build your case. Even if you never use it, you'll have it." "I'm not sure I want a legal case. I just want the truth." "Honey, the truth is your case. Once you have it, you'll know what to do." I spent the following weeks gathering evidence. I found Richard Holloway. He had retired to Florida, but he remembered my grandmother clearly. He remembered the will, the specific language, the intent behind it. "Your grandmother was very clear with me," he said over the phone, his voice aged but sharp. "She wanted you to have that house, Catherine. She said you were the only one who truly understood the meaning of family." "Then why did it go to Taylor?" A long pause. "Your mother was the executor. She had the authority to interpret the will's language. I advised against her interpretation, but she was insistent." "You advised against it?" "I told her both granddaughters could qualify under the wording. I suggested she discuss it with you before making a unilateral decision. She declined." "Proceed as instructed," I murmured. "I'm sorry?" "Nothing. Thank you, Mr. Holloway. You've told me everything I need to know." I spent the next 6 months building my case. Bank records, emails, screenshots, timestamps. I printed everything, organized it chronologically, documented every dollar I had given and every lie I had been told. The folder grew thick. I bought a red cover for it, the color of stop signs, of warnings, of blood, 47 pages, 3 years of betrayal, documented and numbered. For 6 months I continued playing my role, attended Sunday dinners, answered the phone when Margaret called, watched Taylor post Instagram stories while collecting rental income from a house she had stolen from me. I said nothing, revealed nothing, waited. I told myself I was waiting for the right moment. In truth, I was waiting for permission. Permission to stop being the dutiful daughter, to stop pretending, to finally speak the truth that had been choking me my entire life. That permission would come at a family dinner, from my mother's own mouth. I had the evidence. I had the truth. What I didn't have was a plan. Not until Taylor and Derek decided to get greedy. Not until they announced they wanted to sell Grandma's house and keep all the money. That was when I knew. The dinner would be my courtroom, and the red folder would be my verdict. The waiting room at Whitfield and Associates was modest but professional. Family law, estate disputes, real estate. The brass plaque on the wall listed the firm's specialties in dignified lettering. I had found Robert Whitfield through a colleague's recommendation. "He's tough but fair," she had told me, "and he doesn't sugarcoat anything." I sat clutching a manila envelope on my lap. Inside was everything I had gathered. The forwarded emails, the property records, Grandma Eleanor's letter, the confirmation from Richard Holloway. I had rehearsed what I would say a dozen times on the drive over. But now, sitting in this sterile room with its leather chairs and legal journals, the words felt inadequate for the betrayal they described. The receptionist appeared. "Ms. Blake, Mr. Whitfield will see you now." His office was cluttered in the way of someone who actually worked rather than just displayed impressive things. Files covered his desk, sticky notes peppered his computer monitor, law books lay open on every surface. But when I entered, Robert Whitfield gave me his complete attention. Silver hair, reading glasses, sharp eyes that seemed to assess and catalog everything. "Ms. Blake, have a seat. Tell me everything." I had come for legal advice. What I got was something more valuable. Robert Whitfield didn't just look at my documents, he looked at me. And he saw what I had been too close to see myself. I laid out the evidence methodically. My years of financial training served me well, clear, organized, unemotional. The will and its ambiguous language, Margaret's unilateral interpretation, the property transfer to Taylor, the lawyer's ignored warning email, Grandma Eleanor's handwritten letter expressing her true wishes. Whitfield reviewed everything in silence, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. His expression remained neutral, a professional poker face that gave nothing away. I watched him read, trying to decode any reaction. The minutes stretched. Finally, he removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "Ms. Blake, you have a case. The will's language is clearly ambiguous. The granddaughter who demonstrates care for the family could apply to either you or your sister." My heart lifted slightly. "So I can contest the transfer?" "Your grandmother's letter expressing her intent is compelling. The email showing your mother was warned that both granddaughters could qualify. That's significant documentation of bad faith. Then I can get the house back? You can try." He held up a hand before my hope could build further. "But I need to be honest about what that means. Estate contests are expensive. We're talking $50,000 to $100,000 in legal fees, depending on how aggressively your family fights back. They're also long, 2 to 3 years minimum, more if there are appeals. And they're ugly. Your family will hire their own lawyers, depositions will be taken, things will be said under oath that can never be unsaid. Every family secret, every grievance, every petty conflict, it all becomes part of the public record." He leaned forward. "Even if you win, Ms. Blake, you might lose more than you gain. You need to understand that." I sat with his words. The weight of them. $100,000. 3 years of legal warfare. My family's dirty laundry aired in court documents anyone could access. "What do you actually want here?" Whitfield asked. "Not what you think you should want. What do you actually want?" I opened my mouth to answer, closed it. The question cut deeper than I expected. "I thought I wanted justice," I said finally. "But I don't want to spend years in court fighting over the past. I don't want to bankrupt myself trying to reclaim something that should have been mine." "Then what?" "I want them to know that I know. I want the lies to stop. I want to stop being the person everyone takes from while pretending I'm the problem." Whitfield nodded slowly, as if this answer satisfied something. "If you don't want to go to court, there's another path. Document everything. Create an irrefutable record of what they've done, what you've contributed, what they've taken. Then when the time is right, you use that record. Use it how? Right now, your family operates on a narrative. You're the selfish daughter who never helps, who hoards money while they struggle. That narrative survives because no one has ever challenged it with facts. But if you have proof, hard, documented, undeniable proof, of what you've contributed over the years, and proof of what they've taken," he spread his hands, "then you control the story. Not them. You decide when the truth comes out and how." "What would that accomplish?" "That depends on your family. Some people, when confronted with evidence of their behavior, experience genuine shame. They make amends. They change. And others? Others double down, deny everything, attack the messenger." He met my eyes. "You know your family better than I do. Which type are they?" I thought about Margaret's ability to rewrite history in real time, Taylor's instant tears and instant recovery, the way they had laughed about me in the kitchen while I paid their bills. "They'll attack," I said. "They won't admit anything. Then the documentation becomes your shield. If they try to sue you for support, or slander you to other family members, or claim you've somehow wronged them, you have the receipts. Literally." He slid his business card across the desk. "But Catherine, once you show them the evidence, there's no going back. You won't just be exposing their lies. You'll be exposing the lie of your entire family, the fiction that you've all been maintaining for decades. Some people do this and rebuild something better. Others do it and lose everything. You need to be prepared for either outcome." I picked up his card. I'm not going to sue them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I am going to build the case. Every dollar, every lie, every betrayal, all of it documented. And when they finally push me too far, I'll be ready. Whitfield's expression shifted slightly, something like respect. When that day comes, call me. And Ms. Blake, make copies of everything. Store them somewhere safe. People who have something to hide often try to destroy the evidence. The next 4 months became an exercise in methodical obsession. Every evening after work, I added to the file. Bank statements going back 3 years, each suspicious transaction highlighted and annotated. Screenshots of text messages demanding money, time-stamped and organized. Photos from Taylor's Instagram with dates that corresponded to my payments. Her Cancun vacation posted the same week I covered the property taxes. Her treating myself selfie uploaded the day I made my first mortgage payment. I created a spreadsheet with columns for everything: date, request, amount given, their stated reason, actual use of funds when known. Evidence. The cross-referencing revealed patterns I had been too close to see. Taylor's spending sprees always followed my deposits. Margaret's emergencies clustered around the holidays, when guilt was most effective. The fake candle business had generated 0 products but maximum extraction. I bought a red folder, bright red, impossible to miss. I printed everything and numbered the pages by hand, 1 of 47, 2 of 47, all the way through. The folder became my anchor, my proof that I wasn't crazy, that the exploitation was real and documented and undeniable. Some nights I just held it, feeling its weight. 47 pages of truth in a family built on lies. Carol noticed the toll it was taking. "You're losing weight. You're not sleeping. This isn't healthy." "This is the first time in my life I've had proof that I'm not the problem," I told her. "I need this. I need to know it's real, that I'm not imagining things, that I'm not the selfish monster they've made me out to be. It's real. The question is what it's doing to you." She was right to worry, but I couldn't stop, not yet, not until the record was complete. One night, sorting through screenshots, I found a photo I had forgotten about. Taylor's Instagram, 3 years ago, the very day I had made my first mortgage payment to save our parents from foreclosure. Taylor had posted a selfie, champagne glass in hand, the caption reading, "Treating myself because I deserve it." I printed it. Page 23 of 47. 3 months before the dinner, I was scrolling through Facebook when I saw something that made me stop cold. A mutual acquaintance from high school had posted photos from a charity gala. Glamorous people in formal wear, champagne towers, the usual social display. But in the background of one photo, unmistakably, was Derek. He wasn't alone. His arm was around a woman who was definitely not my sister. Asian, elegant, mid-30s. They were leaning into each other with the comfort of intimacy, laughing at something private. This wasn't a work colleague. This was something else entirely. I zoomed in, screenshotted. Then I began to dig. The woman's name was Amy Chen, tagged in the photo by someone who didn't realize what they were revealing. Her profile was mostly private, but a few photos were public. A restaurant check-in where Derek was visible in the reflection of the window. A hiking trail post captioned, "Beautiful day with great company." Derek's car clearly visible in the parking lot background. A birthday dinner where the photographer had accidentally captured Derek's hand on Amy's knee. The timeline stretched back at least 8 months. 8 months of overlap with his marriage to my sister. My first instinct was to tell Taylor immediately. She deserved to know. Whatever our differences, no woman deserved to be deceived like this. Then I stopped myself. Why? Why was it my responsibility to fix this too? Taylor had never shown me an ounce of loyalty. She had lied about me, taken from me, laughed at me behind my back. She had accepted a house that should have been mine and never once questioned whether that was fair. Was Derek's infidelity my secret to expose? Was Taylor's marriage my problem to solve? I saved the screenshots anyway. Not for the red folder. This was different. But information was power, and I was done being powerless. 2 months before the dinner, Taylor called me on a Tuesday evening. This was unusual. She rarely reached out unless money was involved. When I answered, she was crying. Actually crying, not performing. "Catherine, I don't know what to do." Her voice was small, frightened. "Derek is never home anymore." "What do you mean?" "He says it's work, but he's always on his phone. He won't let me see the screen. He takes calls in the other room. And I found a receipt for a restaurant I've never been to. A nice restaurant. For 2 people. My heart rate spiked. I knew the answer she was seeking. I had photographs, evidence, proof. "Do you think—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Do you think he's cheating on me?" This was the moment. I could tell her the truth. I could share what I knew, be the sister she had never been to me, take the high road. But I thought about every time I had asked Taylor for support, every time she had mocked me behind my back, every dollar she had taken while calling me selfish, every Sunday dinner where she had smirked while our mother tore me down. The words formed in my mouth. "Yes, he's cheating. I have proof." What came out was, "I don't know, Taylor, have you tried talking to him?" He gets defensive whenever I bring it up. Says I'm being paranoid. "Maybe you should trust your instincts." "You're probably right," she sniffled. "I'm probably just being paranoid. Derek loves me. He wouldn't do that." The call ended. I stared at my phone. I didn't feel guilty. I felt nothing. And that absence of feeling was perhaps the most telling sign of how far I had already traveled from the person I used to be. The next Sunday dinner, Taylor acted like the phone call had never happened. She was laughing, showing off a new bracelet Derek had bought her. "A just because gift," she cooed. I looked at Derek across the table. He met my eyes and looked away quickly. He knew that I knew, and now we both had secrets. 6 weeks before the dinner, pieces of a larger puzzle began falling into place. At family gatherings, I noticed Taylor and Derek huddled in corners with Margaret, whispering conversations that stopped when I approached. Documents appeared and disappeared. My father looked increasingly confused and withdrawn, signing papers that were placed in front of him without seeming to understand what they contained. One afternoon, I cornered Donald in the garage while the others were inside. "Dad, what's going on? What are those papers Taylor keeps bringing over?" His face was gray, exhausted. "Nothing, just some financial planning." "What kind of financial planning?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Your mother says it's for the best, in case something happens to us, so there's no confusion about who makes decisions." My blood ran cold. "What kind of decisions?" "I don't know, Katie. Legal things. Taylor explained it, but I didn't really understand." I investigated that evening. In my parents' home office, I found a draft document in the printer tray, probably printed for review before the final version was prepared. Power of attorney, granting Taylor and Derek full control over Margaret and Donald's financial decisions. The authority to manage bank accounts, investments, property, including the right to sell assets, including the right to sell the house my parents currently lived in. The house I had been paying the mortgage on for 3 years. This wasn't just greed. This was a takeover. If my parents signed this, Taylor and Derek would control everything. They could sell the house, pocket the money, put my parents in whatever nursing home they chose. They could liquidate every asset, make every decision, answer to no one. All while I continued paying bills for a family that had cut me out completely. The phone call came 1 month before the dinner. Margaret's voice was unusually warm, which immediately raised my suspicions. "Catherine, we're having a special family dinner next month, a family financial planning meeting. Taylor and Derek have some ideas they want to share with everyone." Family financial planning. The same words Donald had used. "It's important that everyone is there. We need to make some decisions together, as a family." This was it. The moment they would ask me to sign something, or ask for more money, or both. "Of course, Mom. I'll be there." "Wonderful, Sunday the 15th. Don't be late." I hung up and looked at the red folder on my desk. 47 pages. 3 years of evidence. 1 chance. I called Robert Whitfield. "I think the day is coming." What do you need from me? Just be available, in case things go wrong. They will go wrong, Ms. Blake. That's the point of what you're doing. A pause. Call me after, whatever happens. I spent the next 4 weeks refining the folder. I added the power of attorney draft. Page 46 of 47. I created a timeline summary showing every payment, every lie, every contradiction. Page 47 of 47. I practiced what I would say, when I would say it, how I would stay calm when they attacked. I bought a new tote bag, large enough to hold the folder, sturdy enough to carry the weight of what was coming. On the morning of Sunday the 15th, I woke early. I showered, dressed carefully. Not my usual oversized sweater that made me invisible. Navy blazer, tailored pants, professional but powerful. The clothes of someone who meant business. I looked in the mirror. I didn't recognize myself. Good. The red folder sat in the tote bag on the passenger seat as I drove to Glastonbury. 45 minutes without music, without distraction. My mind was clear, sharp, focused. I pulled into my parents' driveway at exactly 5 o'clock. Taylor's SUV was there. Derek's sedan. No escape for anyone. I took a breath, picked up the bag, walked to the front door. I had spent 3 years giving them everything. 3 years of silence, sacrifice, and being called useless while keeping their lives afloat. Tonight, the silence would end. Tonight, they would hear every word they had never let me say. I rang the doorbell. Margaret opened the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Catherine, come in. We have so much to discuss." I stepped through the front door of my parents' house, and the tote bag on my shoulder felt heavier than its actual weight. The red folder inside contained 47 pages, but it might as well have been made of lead. Margaret's smile was too wide, too welcoming. The smile of someone who wanted something, not someone who was happy to see me. "Catherine, you're right on time. Come in, come in." The smell of overcooked roast beef hit me immediately. The same meal she had been making for 40 years. The same slight char on the edges, the same canned gravy. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked steadily, marking time in a house I had helped keep from foreclosure. Ice clinked in glasses from the living room. Taylor's perfume, expensive, cloying, probably purchased with money I had provided, hung in the air. My heart was steady. I had expected nerves, racing thoughts, second-guessing. Instead, I felt calm. 3 years of preparation had led to this moment. The only questions left were when to strike and how hard. I had walked through this door hundreds of times. As a child, eager to please. As a teenager, desperate to belong. As an adult, conditioned to serve. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't walking in as a daughter. I was walking in as a witness. And I had brought the evidence. The living room held the familiar cast of characters, each playing their designated roles. Taylor was perched on the love seat, scrolling through her phone without looking up. She wore a new dress, burgundy silk, at least $400 by my estimate, and her nails were freshly done, a manicure that cost more than some people's grocery bills. She offered an air kiss in my general direction without making eye contact. "Hey, sis!" Derek stood by the window, drink in hand, phone in the other, his body language tense and distracted. He nodded at me without meeting my eyes, something he had been doing since I discovered his affair with Amy Chen. "Catherine." The single word was all he offered before returning to whatever was on his screen. Running from something, I thought, or running to someone. My father sat in his recliner, looking smaller and more diminished than I remembered. When I approached, he reached for my hand. His grip was weak, trembling. The grip of a man who had surrendered to forces he no longer tried to understand. "Katie." His voice was soft, almost apologetic. "Glad you're here." He was the only one who still called me by my childhood name. Something in his tone made me pause, a warning perhaps, or a preemptive apology for what was coming. Ethan came downstairs and his face actually brightened when he saw me. "Hey, Aunt Catherine." It was the warmest greeting I had received. He sat on the couch, AirPods around his neck, watching the adults with wary, knowing eyes. He was 16 years old, and he saw more clearly than anyone else in this family. As I set down my tote bag by the chair I always occupied, alone on one side of the dining table facing the unified front of Taylor and Derek, I noticed something on the coffee table. A blue folder. Official-looking documents peeking from the edge. I recognized the letterhead. Hartford County Real Estate Associates. My stomach tightened. They had already started. Whatever they were planning tonight, it was further along than I had anticipated. Margaret clapped her hands with theatrical flourish. "Everyone to the table. I've made something special for this important evening." Important evening. I filed the phrase away, adding it to the mental catalog of warning signs. The seating arrangement was deliberate. Margaret at the head, Donald at the opposite end, Taylor and Derek on one side, me alone on the other. Ethan was banished to the kitchen counter. Adult conversation tonight, sweetie, which only confirmed my suspicions. They had planned this. I was strategically isolated. Margaret served dinner with the self-congratulatory air of someone presenting a masterpiece. The roast beef was overcooked, the mashed potatoes lumpy, the green beans from a can. But she acted like Julia Child unveiling a culinary triumph. The small talk was forced, superficial, weather, traffic, neighborhood gossip about people I barely knew. Taylor mentioned her busy week despite having no job. Derek talked about big deals at the car dealership, despite his sales numbers being down. I knew because I had looked, back when I was trying to understand how they could afford so little and spend so much. Margaret complimented Taylor's dress, her hair, her glow. She asked about Derek's work, Ethan's school, their vacation plans. No one asked me anything about my life. When I mentioned my promotion possibility, Margaret interrupted mid-sentence. "That's nice, dear. Taylor, tell us more about that client you mentioned." The client that didn't exist. The interior design business that had never materialized. But questioning Taylor's fantasies was not allowed in this house. I ate mechanically, waiting. My mind was on the red folder in my bag, the blue folder on the coffee table. 2 folders in this room, 2 different versions of the truth. Halfway through dinner, I excused myself to use the restroom. In the hallway, away from the dining room's sightlines, my father appeared. He was pretending to head to the kitchen, but his movements were too purposeful. He grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. His voice dropped to an urgent whisper. "Katie, whatever they ask tonight, be careful." "What do you mean, Dad?" His eyes were wet, conflicted. "I know you've done more than they say, more than anyone knows. I should have..." Margaret's voice cut through from the dining room, sharp and commanding. "Donald, where did you go?" He released my arm like it was electrified. "Coming, dear." And he shuffled away without another word, his brief moment of courage extinguished by decades of conditioning. I watched him retreat to the dining room, shoulders hunched in defeat. He knew something, maybe everything, but he was too afraid of Margaret to speak. For the first time, I felt something other than disappointment toward my father. I felt pity. He was as trapped as I had been. The difference was, I was about to break free. After the plates were cleared, Margaret remained standing. She clinked her glass like she was hosting a gala rather than a family dinner in a house she couldn't afford. "Now then, let's discuss why we're all here." She gestured to Taylor and Derek like a game show host presenting prizes. "Taylor and Derek have been doing some thinking about our family's future." Taylor cleared her throat, putting on her serious face. "As you all know, Grandma Eleanor left us her house on Maple Lane." Left us. The lie flowed so easily from her lips. I knew the truth. That house had been transferred solely to Taylor 4 years ago, based on Margaret's deliberate misinterpretation of the will. But I stayed silent. Let them dig their hole deeper. "The house has been a wonderful asset," Taylor continued, using words she had clearly rehearsed. "But we think it's time to consider new options." Derek shifted into his salesman voice, smooth, reasonable, utterly false. "The market is hot right now. Property values are at an all-time high. This is an ideal time to sell." They proposed selling Grandma Eleanor's house for approximately $420,000. After fees and taxes, roughly $380,000 to split fairly among the family. Taylor made air quotes around the word fairly, as if fairness were a quaint concept that didn't really apply. But the details of their fairness emerged quickly. My share would be $50,000. Taylor's share would be $190,000. Or, alternatively, I could buy Taylor out for $250,000 to keep the house in the family. $250,000. For a house that should have been mine. For a house worth less than that on the open market. They wanted me to overpay for my own inheritance. Derek slid the blue folder across the table toward me. Inside were documents, a pre-prepared agreement with my name already typed on the signature line. They had come to this dinner with paperwork ready. This wasn't a discussion, it was an ambush. That's a lot to consider, I said, keeping my voice carefully neutral. Taylor's smile vanished instantly. What's to consider? It's a great deal. Derek leaned forward. You have a good job, no dependents. This should be easy for you. Margaret's voice carried a warning edge. We're giving you first right of refusal. That's generous. Generous. They were offering to sell me my own inheritance at a premium after stealing it in the first place. And they called it generous. I asked for time to think. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Think, Taylor's voice rose. Catherine, this is a limited opportunity. We've already talked to a realtor, Derek said. There's interest. We can't wait forever for you to make up your mind, Margaret added. I looked more closely at the listing agreement in the blue folder. The date jumped out at me. 3 weeks ago. This is dated 3 weeks ago, I said quietly. The house is already listed. You've been showing it. Taylor's face flickered, guilt quickly suppressed. Derek's smile tightened. We had to move quickly, Margaret said smoothly. The market waits for no one. And this offer pending, I pointed to a line on the document. You've already accepted a buyer? Derek cleared his throat. We have a strong offer, $415,000. We need to respond by Friday. The truth crystallized. They didn't want me to buy the house. That was a decoy option, priced deliberately too high. What they really wanted was my signature on a document waiving any legal claim to contest the sale. They needed my cooperation because somehow they knew the will was ambiguous. They were afraid I might challenge the transfer. They were trying to buy my silence before I knew I had a voice. For once, they were right to be afraid. I'd want my own lawyer to review these documents, I said. The words my own lawyer landed like grenades. Taylor exploded. A lawyer? Are you serious right now? This is family, Catherine, Margaret said, her voice dripping with manufactured hurt. Not a courtroom. Why do you always have to make everything so complicated? Taylor demanded. Just sign the papers like a normal person. Margaret shifted tactics, deploying guilt with practiced precision. I didn't raise you to be this suspicious of your own family. We've given you everything, and this is how you repay us? After all we've sacrificed for you, what exactly have you sacrificed for me? The question hung in the air. No one answered because there was no answer. The silence stretched. Margaret's face reddened. Taylor looked to Derek for backup. Derek studied his phone, suddenly unwilling to engage. Donald spoke from the end of the table, barely audible. Maybe we should give her time to think, Margaret whipped toward him. Excuse me? She just asked for a few days. That seems reasonable. Don't you dare undermine me, Donald. I'm just saying, you're not just saying anything. Sit there and be quiet. My father shrank back into his chair, silenced again. His brief attempt at defending me crushed in seconds. I watched the dynamic play out. Margaret tyrannical and unchallenged, Taylor waiting for permission to attack, Derek calculating his next angle, my father mute and diminished. And myself, alone on my side of the table, holding cards they didn't know existed. The insults were coming. I could feel them building behind Margaret's eyes, loading in Taylor's throat. They needed me to break so they could dismiss me as emotional. They needed me to cry so they could call me dramatic. They needed me to storm out so they could sign my name themselves. But I wasn't leaving, not until I heard them say what they really thought of me. Margaret stood, palms flat on the table. Her frustration had been building all evening, and now it was ready to overflow. "I have had enough of your attitude, Catherine. We are trying to do something good for this family, and you sit there with your silence and your suspicion." "Just say what we're all thinking, Mom," Taylor interjected. Derek nodded. "Exactly. It's about time someone did." Margaret's eyes narrowed. She took a breath, the deep, dramatic inhale of someone about to deliver a speech they'd been rehearsing in their head for years. "You know what you are, Catherine?" I felt it coming. The final blow. The words she had been holding back for 48 years. My hand drifted down to my tote bag. My fingers found the edge of the red folder. Margaret's next words would change everything. They would be the most honest thing she had ever said to me. They would be cruel and unfair and absolutely unforgivable. And they would be the last lie about me that I would ever let stand unchallenged. "You're useless trash, Catherine. You always have been. You're useless trash, Catherine. You always have been." The words hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. My mother stood at the head of the table, her face twisted with decades of contempt finally given voice. Her finger pointed at me like a weapon. The dining room fell completely silent. Even the grandfather clock in the hallway seemed to stop ticking. The only sound was the soft hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen, indifferent to the explosion that had just occurred. I felt the words hit my chest, not like a punch, like a key turning in a lock. Something clicked into place. Everything I had ever felt, every slight, every silence, every sacrifice ignored, crystallized into this single moment. My mother had finally said out loud what she had been communicating for 48 years. I didn't flinch. That surprised me. I had spent my entire life flinching at her disapproval, her criticism, her weaponized silence. But in that moment, something different happened. Instead of pain, I felt lightness. The final thread of a fraying rope had snapped, and I was free. Taylor's lips curled into a satisfied smirk. Derek suddenly found his phone fascinating, scrolling through nothing. Donald stared at his plate, shoulders hunched in shame, refusing to meet my eyes. And Ethan had removed his AirPods entirely, staring at his grandmother with something like horror. I waited for someone to say it was too far, for my father to finally defend me, for even Taylor to show a flicker of discomfort. What I got was silence. Complicit, damning silence. The sound of a family choosing sides without saying a word. Margaret, emboldened by the lack of objection, continued her assault. "At least Taylor has a family, a life, a purpose." She gestured at my sister like she was presenting a trophy. "What do you have? Nothing. An apartment and a job, 48 years old, alone, and the only thing you're good at is hoarding money while your family struggles." Taylor seized her opportunity to pile on. "She's always been jealous of me, ever since we were kids. I got the looks, the personality, the husband. She got nothing." She laughed, a cruel, dismissive sound. "No wonder she's bitter." Derek added his contribution, his voice dripping with false concern. "Some people just aren't meant for family life, Catherine. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but you shouldn't punish the rest of us because you ended up alone." Each insult landed with calculated precision. They had been saving these words, I realized. This was rehearsed. They had come prepared to break me, expecting tears and apologies and capitulation. They expected me to crumble and sign their papers. I looked at my father. Donald's eyes were fixed on his water glass, his hands trembling around it. He said nothing. Did nothing. Again. I let them empty their arsenal. Every word they said was a nail in a coffin they didn't know they were building. Not mine, theirs. The coffin of our family, of their lies, of the narrative they had constructed where I was the villain, and they were the victims. Something shifted inside me. Not breaking. I had been broken before. This was different. This was the moment the broken pieces refused to fit back together. My breathing slowed, my heartbeat steadied. A strange clarity descended, sharp and cold. The dutiful daughter was gone. The silent provider, the invisible woman who showed up and paid and never complained, she had left the building. In her place was someone new, someone who had nothing left to lose. I looked around the table. Margaret was breathing hard, waiting for me to cry. Taylor was checking her nails, victory assumed. Derek was already reaching for the blue folder and a pen, ready for my signature, my surrender. "Are you finished?" My voice came out calm, almost gentle. Margaret blinked, thrown off balance. "What?" "I asked if you were finished. I want to make sure you've said everything you needed to say." Taylor rolled her eyes. "We've said plenty." I nodded slowly. "Good, because now it's my turn." I bent down, slowly, deliberately. My hand found the tote bag by my chair. I pulled out the red folder, thick, heavy with truth, and placed it on the table with a soft thud. The reactions were immediate. Margaret frowned. "What is that?" Taylor scoffed. "Oh God, what now?" Derek leaned back, his salesman confidence faltering. Donald looked up, and what little color remained in his face drained away completely. Ethan leaned forward, sensing that something important was about to happen. I stood. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The power in the room had shifted, and everyone felt it. "You called me useless trash, Mom. You said I've never done anything for this family. You said I hoard money while you struggle." I placed my hand flat on the red folder. "So I have a question for you." I looked directly at Margaret. My voice was steady, clear, cutting through the silence like a blade. "Then who exactly has been paying your mortgage for the last 3 years?" The question detonated in the room. Margaret's face froze mid-expression, her mouth half open. Taylor's smirk vanished. Her fork slipped from her fingers and clattered against her plate, the sound echoing in the stunned silence. Derek's phone slid from his hand onto the table. Donald closed his eyes, a man watching the inevitable finally arrive. For 3 full seconds, no one breathed. The only sound was Taylor's fork still vibrating against the china. I watched each face process the question, confusion giving way to calculation, calculation giving way to fear. They didn't know how much I knew, but they knew I knew something. And that terrified them. Margaret recovered first, her voice too sharp, too defensive. "What are you talking about? The mortgage is paid. Your father and I handle our own bills." I opened the red folder. Page 1, bank statement from 3 years ago. I turned it so they could see the highlighted lines. "See this transfer? $6,200. That's my money, going to an account that pays your mortgage." I flipped the page. Page 2, same thing, next month. Page 3, page 4, page 5. Taylor interjected, her voice rising. "So you helped with a few payments." "That doesn't mean a few payments," I cut her off. 36 payments, Taylor, every single month for 3 years. Do the math. That's over $32,000, just for the mortgage. Derek tried to regain control, his voice smooth and reasonable. "Okay, so you contributed to the household. That's generous of you, but that doesn't change the situation with Grandma's house." "Oh, we'll get to Grandma's house," I said. "Don't worry, we'll definitely get there." Derek's jaw tightened. He didn't like the shift in power. Margaret attempted deflection. "Even if what you're saying is true, which I'm not confirming, family helps family. That's what you're supposed to do. You don't get to hold it over our heads like some kind of debt." I laughed. It was not a kind sound. "Hold it over your heads? You didn't even know I was doing it. You never said thank you, not once in 3 years. And while I was paying your bills, you were telling Taylor I never help. You were telling everyone I was selfish. You were rewriting history while I was the only thing keeping this family afloat." I continued flipping through the folder with practiced ease. Page 12, Credit card statements for Mom's card, spa treatments, home decor, that wellness retreat you took last spring. I looked up at Margaret. Total, $8,500. I paid that too. Margaret sputtered. I never asked you to. You didn't have to ask. The bills came to the house. Past due, final notice. I paid them so you wouldn't destroy your credit completely. I paused. You're welcome, by the way. Page 22. I turned to Taylor. Remember your candle business? Taylor's Glow, the one that needed $15,000 in startup capital? Taylor's face went pale. That was an investment. Where's the business, Taylor? Where's the website? Where are the products? Where are the clients? Silence. I'll tell you where. Nowhere, because it never existed. That $15,000 went to shopping sprees and spa days and designer handbags. I pulled out a printed photo and held it up. Page 23. Your Instagram post from 3 years ago. Treating myself because I deserve it. Posted the same day I made my first mortgage payment to save this house. Taylor's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. And while we're being honest about where money goes, I turned to Derek. How's Amy Chen doing? Derek's face went white. What? 47 Willow Street, right? Nice restaurant choices. The hiking trails are lovely this time of year. Taylor whipped toward her husband. Who is Amy Chen? That's not, Derek stammered. She's lying, he managed. She's trying to distract. I held up my phone. I have photos. Would you like to see them? Derek fell silent. Taylor's hands began to shake. She stared at her husband, confusion and suspicion and dawning horror warring on her face. Derek, who is she talking about? He couldn't meet her eyes. I returned to the folder. Let me give you the full picture. Mortgage payments over 3 years, $32,000. Credit card bailouts, $8,500. Taylor's fake business, $15,000. Property taxes I covered, $3,500. Plus the countless small loans that were never repaid. I paused for effect, letting the numbers sink in. Grand total over $50,000. The number hung in the air. $50,000 I gave to this family, while being told I was selfish, while being called useless trash, while being excluded from family trips and mocked behind my back. I looked at Margaret. And while being written out of my grandmother's will. Margaret's hand went to her throat. Mom, do you want to tell everyone about Grandma Eleanor's actual wishes? Or should I? Taylor's confusion deepened. What about Grandma's will? I pulled out another page, a photocopy of Eleanor's letter. Grandma Eleanor left a will. You all know that. What you don't know, what Mom made sure you didn't know, is what it actually said. I read directly from the document. The house on Maple Lane was left to the granddaughter who demonstrates care for the family. Ambiguous language, open to interpretation. Right, Taylor said slowly. And that's me. I got the house. Mom said, you got the house because Mom decided it should be you, not because Grandma intended it. I held up Eleanor's handwritten letter. Grandma wrote me a letter. I found it 8 months ago, hidden in a box she left me. A box Mom dismissed as worthless. I read aloud, my voice steady despite the emotion swelling in my chest. My dearest Catherine, you are the heart of this family, even if they don't see it. The house on Maple Lane is meant for you, for the one who truly cares for this family. Don't let your mother convince you otherwise. I looked up. Sound familiar, Mom? Margaret's face had gone gray. That letter it's out of context. Mother was confused at the end. I also spoke to Richard Holloway, Grandma's original lawyer. He confirmed her intent. He has documentation. He advised you... I pulled out the email, reading directly. That both granddaughters could arguably qualify under the will's language. He recommended you discuss it with me before making a unilateral decision. I set down the email. Your response was 3 words. Proceed as instructed. You committed fraud, Mom. You stole my inheritance. And Taylor benefited from that theft for 4 years while I paid your bills." Taylor turned on Margaret, her voice cracking. "You told me Grandma wanted me to have it. You said Catherine didn't care about family things." Margaret opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "Was any of that true?" Taylor demanded. "Have you been lying to me too?" The alliance was fracturing. I watched with grim satisfaction as the predators began to turn on each other. I straightened, squaring my shoulders. "Here's what's going to happen. That sale stops. Today. Right now." "You can't," Derek started. "I have enough evidence to contest the deed transfer and tie this property up in court for years. Your pending offer? It's gone. No buyer will touch a house with a disputed title." "This is ridiculous," Margaret said, but her voice had lost its force. "You can't just—" "I'm not asking for the house back. Not yet. But you will not sell it without my consent. And the $50,000 I've given this family over the past 3 years?" I met each of their eyes in turn. "Consider it a loan that's now due." Taylor's voice was shrill. "We don't have that kind of money." "Then I suggest you figure it out. Sell some of those handbags. Cancel the spa memberships. Get jobs. Do what the rest of us do when we need money. Earn it." I gathered the folder, leaving several pages scattered on the table for them to review. "You called me useless trash." My voice was calm, almost conversational. "But let me tell you what I see at this table. A mother who stole from both her daughters, one openly, one secretly. A sister who took everything and gave nothing. A brother-in-law who's cheating on his wife while bleeding her dry. And a father—" My voice softened slightly as I looked at Donald. "A father who watched it all happen and said nothing." Donald's eyes were wet. He nodded once, accepting the verdict. "Dad, I don't blame you entirely, but your silence made you complicit. It's too late to change what happened." I picked up my tote bag and walked toward the door. Behind me, the chaos began to erupt. Taylor screaming at Derek about Amy Chen, Margaret shouting at Taylor to calm down, Derek's chair scraping back as he tried to escape down the hallway. I heard my name being called. Margaret's voice demanding I come back. Taylor's accusations, now directed everywhere at once, the sound of a family imploding. I opened the front door and stepped out into the cool night air. I didn't look back. I walked to my car, got in, and sat behind the wheel. My hands were steady. My breathing was even. For the first time in 48 years, I had said everything I needed to say. I had shown them who I really was, not the useless trash they believed me to be, but the only person who had ever held their world together. And now they would learn what it felt like when I let go. I started the engine and drove away, leaving the chaos of my family behind me. In the rearview mirror, the house grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared. I didn't look back, not once. I sat behind the wheel of my car, engine running, hands gripping at 10 and 2. The front door of my parents' house was still visible in the rearview mirror. I could see silhouettes moving behind the windows, chaos in motion, shapes colliding and separating. Margaret's voice carried through the night air, muffled but unmistakably furious. My hands began to shake. Not during the confrontation. During, I had been steady as stone. But now, alone in the dark with the engine humming, the delayed reaction hit me like a wave. My breath came in short bursts. I realized I had been holding tension in my shoulders, my jaw, my entire body for 3 years. Now it was releasing all at once, and I didn't know if I was going to laugh or scream or cry. I laughed. A strange, broken sound that surprised me. It echoed in the empty car, bouncing off the windows. Derek's sedan was already pulling out of the driveway behind me, headlights sweeping across the lawn as he fled the scene. I didn't know where he was going. To Amy Chen's apartment, probably, or just anywhere that wasn't inside that house with his wife's accusations ringing in his ears. I put the car in reverse and backed out of the driveway, one last look at the house in the mirror. The home where I had grown up, where I had tried so hard to belong, where I had been invisible for 48 years. Then I drove away. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times. The confrontation, the revelation, the look on their faces when they finally understood what they had done to me. What I hadn't imagined was how quiet it would feel afterward. Not triumphant, not vindicated. Just quiet. Like the silence after a storm passes, when you're still not sure if it's really over. 2 minutes after leaving, my phone buzzed in the cup holder. I glanced down at the screen. Margaret. How dare you? Come back here immediately. I didn't respond. I kept driving. 3 more texts arrived in rapid succession, each one more desperate than the last. You've destroyed this family. I hope you're happy with yourself. Your father is having chest pains because of you. The chest pains card. I almost laughed again. The same manipulation tactic she had used for years, deployed one more time even now. I typed back a single response. Call 911. No reply for 2 minutes. Then, don't be dramatic, he's fine, just upset. Of course he was fine. The medical emergency was always fake. A weapon, not a reality. Taylor's texts started arriving next, from a different number but carrying the same energy. I can't believe you did this to me. Derek won't even look at me now. Who is Amy Chen? Answer me. You ruined my marriage, Catherine. I stared at the screen at a red light. Derek ruined your marriage, Taylor. I just turned on the lights. But I didn't type that. I didn't type anything. I switched the phone to silent and dropped it in my purse. The highway stretched ahead of me, empty and dark. For the first time in 3 years, no one else's emergency was my problem to solve. Then a text came through from an unexpected number. I almost ignored it, but something made me look. Ethan. Aunt Catherine, I'm sorry. About all of it. They're fighting really bad now. I don't know what's happening. A pause. Then another message. Is it true, everything you said? I pulled over to the side of the road. The shoulder was dark, empty, lit only by my hazard lights blinking against the pavement. I typed back carefully. Yes, Ethan, it's all true. I'm sorry you had to hear it that way. His response came immediately. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how wrong. I sat there for a moment, my thumb hovering over the screen. This 16-year-old boy was the only person in that house who had ever shown me genuine kindness. The only one who had apologized. The only one who saw. Take care of yourself, I typed. This isn't your fault. None of it is your fault. Thanks, Aunt Catherine. I hope you're okay. I put the phone away and pulled back onto the highway. The road home had never felt so long or so empty. Back at the house I had just fled, chaos was consuming everything. I would learn the details later from Ethan, who texted me updates like dispatches from a war zone. But I could picture it clearly enough. The scene I had left behind, the explosion still unfolding. The dining room was a battlefield. The red folder sat open on the table, pages scattered like accusations. Margaret stood frozen at the head of the table, her usual commanding presence shattered. Taylor was screaming at Derek, her voice cracking with fury and disbelief. Who is Amy Chen? Tell me the truth. Derek backed toward the hallway, hands raised in defensive surrender. This isn't the time. Not the time. Catherine just told everyone you've been cheating on me, in front of my whole family. She's lying. She's trying to distract everyone from... She has photos, Derek. She said she has photos. Donald hadn't moved from his chair. He sat staring at nothing. A man watching his family tear itself apart without the strength to intervene. Taylor turned on Margaret next, her rage finding a new target. You told me Grandma wanted me to have that house. You told me Catherine didn't care about family things. Was any of that true? Margaret's voice came out weak, defensive. Your grandmother was confused at the end. That's not what Catherine said. She talked to Grandma's lawyer. A lawyer, Mom. She has proof. And from the end of the table, barely audible, Donald spoke. She always had proof. She just never used it. Both women turned to stare at him. What are you talking about? Margaret demanded. Donald's voice was hollow, exhausted. I knew what Catherine was doing, paying our bills, keeping us afloat. I knew, and I said nothing. He looked up at his wife, his eyes wet with tears he no longer tried to hide. I watched what you did to her, for years, and I said nothing. Margaret stared at her husband like she had never seen him before. Taylor grabbed one of the pages from the red folder, the Instagram screenshot, her treating myself post from 3 years ago. She stared at the date, did the math, and her face crumbled. She paid the mortgage the same day I posted this, Taylor whispered. She was saving us while I was drinking champagne. For the first time, Taylor wasn't performing. She was genuinely seeing herself, and she didn't like what she saw. I arrived at my apartment complex and pulled into my parking spot. The familiar concrete walls, the numbered space, the echo of my footsteps in the garage, everything looked exactly the same as when I had left that morning. But I wasn't the same. I would never be the same again. My apartment was clean, orderly, quiet. No chaos here, no screaming, no accusations. Just silence and the hum of the refrigerator, indifferent to the war I had just fought. I made it to the couch before my legs gave out. I sat there in the dark, still wearing my blazer, still carrying my tote bag. The adrenaline was draining out of me, leaving something hollow in its place. What replaced it wasn't relief. It was emptiness. A strange, disorienting void where my family used to be. 48 years of relationships, toxic, exploitative, one-sided, but still relationships, severed in 45 minutes. The tears came, but they weren't the tears I expected. I wasn't crying for what I had lost. I was crying for what I had never had. A mother who loved me the way I needed to be loved. A sister who saw me as a person rather than a resource. A father who defended me instead of hiding from conflict. I mourned the family I had always pretended existed. The fantasy I had sustained through decades of denial. My phone lit up with Carol's name. I answered, my voice hoarse from crying. "Hey, how did it go?" A long pause. I didn't know how to summarize what had just happened. "I did it." And it's done. I'm done. I said everything I needed to say. "I'm coming over," Carol said. "Don't argue." The line went dead. I didn't argue. 20 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. Carol stood in the hallway with a bottle of wine and a box of tissues. I brought supplies. I almost smiled. Almost. We sat on the couch in the dim light, wine poured, tissues within reach. I told her everything, the dinner, Margaret's insult, the red folder, the confrontation. Taylor's fork clattering against her plate. Derek's face when I mentioned Amy Chen. The chaos erupting as I walked out the door. Carol listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from concern to something like satisfaction as the story unfolded. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question I had been avoiding. "How do you feel?" I considered it seriously. Hollow, like I've been carrying a boulder up a hill for years and I finally let go. That sounds like relief. Maybe. But the boulder was all I had. It was heavy and exhausting, but at least I knew what I was doing every day. Push the boulder. Don't let it roll back. Push the boulder. I stared into my wine glass. Now my arms are free, but I don't know what to do with them. Carol set down her glass and turned to face me fully. What you did tonight was the hardest thing. Harder than paying their bills. Harder than showing up every Sunday. Harder than any of it. You told the truth to people who have built their entire lives on lies. That's not destruction, Catherine. That's surgery. You cut out the rot. Now you can heal. The words landed somewhere deep, in a place I had forgotten existed. What if they never speak to me again? I asked. Then you'll know the only relationship you ever had with them was financial, and that's not really a relationship at all. What if I'm really alone now? Carol took my hand. Her grip was warm, solid, real. You're not alone. You have me. You have yourself. She squeezed. For the first time in your life, you actually have yourself. Later that night, after Carol had gone home, I noticed the voicemail notification on my phone. Donald's number. My father had never left me a voicemail in my entire life. I stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering over the play button. Part of me was afraid to hear what he had to say. Part of me was afraid he would try to guilt me into coming back. Part of me was afraid he would say nothing meaningful at all. Finally, I pressed play. His voice was tired, older than I remembered, cracked with emotion. "Katie, it's Dad." A long pause, the sound of breathing, of someone gathering courage. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. I watched your mother. I watched what she did. To you, to your grandmother's wishes. I knew about all of it. The money you sent, the sacrifices you made. I knew." Another pause. I heard him swallow hard. "I should have said something. I should have protected you. I should have been your father instead of your mother's silent accomplice. I didn't, and there's no excuse for that." His voice broke on the next words. "I just want you to know you were right about everything. You were right and I was a coward." The longest pause yet. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "And I'm proud of you, Katie, for finally saying what I never could. That's all. I love you." Click. I lay in the dark, phone pressed to my chest, listening to my own heartbeat. I played the message 3 more times. "I'm proud of you." 4 words I had waited 48 years to hear. They came too late to fix anything, but maybe not too late to matter. Somewhere in Glastonbury, the house I had fled was still in chaos. Margaret was reading page after page of the evidence I had left behind, her hands shaking as she confronted the scope of what Catherine Blake had documented. The narrative she had controlled for decades was crumbling. Taylor was locked in the guest room, sobbing. Real tears now, not performance. Her marriage was in flames. Her carefully constructed image as the beloved daughter was exposed as a fraud. And the sister she had dismissed as useless had turned out to be the only thing standing between her family and complete ruin. Derek was driving aimlessly through the Connecticut night, ignoring Taylor's calls, trying to calculate how much Catherine knew and how much damage had been done. His affair was exposed. His debts, the ones he had hidden from everyone, including his wife, were about to surface. The life he had built on lies was collapsing. And I was here, in my apartment, alone but not lonely, damaged but not destroyed. I finally fell asleep near 3 in the morning. My last thought before unconsciousness took me. It's done. Whatever comes next, it's done. I slept without dreams for the first time in months. When I woke, my phone showed 47 notifications. 47, the same number as the pages in my folder. I didn't read them. I made coffee, watched the sunrise through my window. Let them wait. For 3 years, I had jumped every time they called. I had dropped everything to solve their problems, soothe their emergencies, fund their lifestyles. Now they could learn what it felt like to be ignored. The next 3 months would be the most chaotic of their lives. The blocked sale, the collapsed marriage, the financial reckoning they had postponed for so long. And for once, I wouldn't be there to clean up the mess. I woke on Monday morning to sunlight streaming through my window, and for a moment I forgot what had happened. Then it flooded back. The dinner, the folder, Margaret's face, Taylor's fork clattering against her plate. And I lay still, waiting for the dread to arrive. It didn't come. I checked my phone. The 47 notifications from last night had multiplied to 73. Text messages, missed calls, voicemails, an avalanche of demands I had no intention of answering. I didn't read them. Instead, I showered, made coffee, ate breakfast, a real breakfast, eggs and toast and fresh fruit, the kind of meal I usually skipped because I was too busy solving other people's problems to take care of myself. The routine felt revolutionary. No emergencies to manage, no crises to solve, no guilt-laden phone calls to answer before my first cup of coffee. My phone buzzed continuously on the kitchen counter. I let it buzz. I called my office and spoke to my assistant. "I'm taking a few personal days. Family matter." "Is everything okay, Ms. Blake?" I paused, considering the question. It will be. I hung up and stared out my window at Hartford's skyline, gray and familiar, and somehow different than it had looked the day before. I had never taken personal days for myself, always for them, rushing to Glastonbury for some manufactured emergency, driving my father to appointments, fixing problems I hadn't created. For 3 years, I had been on call for every crisis, every demand, every manipulated catastrophe. That Monday morning, I took myself off the schedule. The world didn't end. The sun still rose. And somewhere in Glastonbury, my family was learning what it felt like to handle their own problems. Monday afternoon, my phone rang with a number I recognized. Robert Whitfield. Ms. Blake, I received some interesting calls this morning. Let me guess, my family's real estate agent? Among others. I could hear the dry amusement in his voice. Derek Kensington called 3 times before 9 o'clock. He was agitated. I settled into my couch, allowing myself a small smile. What's the situation? Whitfield explained. The pending offer on Grandma Eleanor's house required clear title. Clear title required all potential claimants to sign off on the sale. My challenge to the deed transfer, the one I had threatened at the dinner, gave me legal standing as a potential claimant. Without my signature, the sale could not proceed. The buyer's deadline is Friday, Whitfield continued. If the sale falls through, they lose the offer. Your sister and brother-in-law were counting on that money. What do you recommend? That's not my decision to make, but you have leverage now. How you use it is up to you. I thought about Taylor's smirk at the dinner table, Margaret's contempt, the years of being called selfish while I funded their lifestyles. I'm not signing anything. Not yet. Understood. What's your timeline? Let the deadline pass. Let them sweat. I'll decide what I want when I'm ready. And after that? I don't know yet. Maybe I'll pursue the legal challenge. Maybe I'll let it go. But right now, I want them to understand something. What's that? That I'm not useless, that I never was. Before hanging up, Whitfield added something that made me pause. One more thing. Derek Kensington called me directly this morning, offered to make it worth my while if I could convince you to sign quickly. He tried to bribe you? He didn't use that word, but yes, I declined, of course. However, you should know they're getting desperate. Desperate people can be unpredictable. I filed that information away. Desperation made people dangerous, but it also made them careless. Tuesday morning, I went to my regular cafe, craving the simple pleasure of normalcy. I ordered my usual latte, found a quiet corner table, and settled in with a book I had been meaning to read for months. I was halfway through my drink when a shadow fell across my table. Taylor stood there looking like she hadn't slept in days. No makeup, hair unwashed, eyes red and swollen. She was wearing yoga pants and an old sweatshirt, a far cry from the designer dresses she usually paraded in. We need to talk. I didn't invite her to sit. She sat anyway, dropping into the chair across from me like her legs couldn't hold her anymore. Do you have any idea what you've done? Her voice was hoarse, ragged. I told the truth. That's all I did. Derek left. She spat the words like an accusation. He's been staying at a hotel since Sunday. He won't answer my calls. Is he with Amy Chen? Taylor flinched at the name. I don't know. He won't tell me anything. That sounds like a Derek problem, not a Catherine problem. This is your fault. Her voice rose, drawing glances from other customers. If you hadn't said anything about that woman, if you hadn't humiliated me in front of everyone. Derek was cheating on you for 8 months, Taylor. I didn't make him do that. I didn't force him to lie to you. All I did was turn on the lights. You exposed it in front of my whole family. My son heard everything. And you've been lying about me to that same family for years. You told everyone I was selfish, that I never helped, that I hoarded money while you struggled. You let them believe I was the villain while I was the only thing keeping your world from collapsing. Taylor's face contorted. That's different. How? How is it different? She couldn't answer. Her anger shifted, morphing into something more desperate. "Catherine, please, I need that house sale to go through. Derek and we have debts, serious debts, credit cards, the car loan, Ethan's school tuition. If this sale falls apart, we lose everything." I took a sip of my latte. "And that's my problem because we're sisters." Her voice cracked. "Blood. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" I set down my cup and looked at my sister. Really looked at her. The woman who had taken my money for years without gratitude, who had laughed at me with our mother in the kitchen, who had accepted a house that should have been mine and never once questioned whether that was fair. It meant something to me for 48 years, Taylor, during which time you took my money, mocked me behind my back, and let Mom give you my inheritance. I leaned forward. So no, right now sisters doesn't mean much at all. Taylor's face hardened. The tears dried up instantly, confirmation that they had never been real. "You're going to regret this, Catherine." Her voice was cold now, stripped of pretense. "Mom has ideas, plans. You think that folder of yours matters? We'll find a way around it." She stood, knocking her chair back with a screech. "You've made yourself an enemy today. I hope you understand that." I watched my sister storm out of the cafe, disappearing into the Tuesday morning crowd. I felt nothing. No guilt, no fear, no second guessing. That absence of emotion was the most telling sign of how far I had already traveled from the person I used to be. Wednesday brought the first concrete consequence of my absence. My bank sent a confirmation. The recurring transfer to my parents' account had been canceled. For 3 years, on the first of every month, $2,000 had flowed automatically from my account to theirs. That stream had now stopped. The first of the month was approaching. Without my contribution, the mortgage payment would bounce. The credit cards would go past due. The carefully constructed illusion of solvency would collapse. And I wouldn't be there to catch them. Margaret left a voicemail that afternoon. I listened to it once, my finger hovering over the delete button. Her voice was controlled, almost pleasant, more unsettling than screaming would have been. "Catherine, darling, I think we've all said things we regret. These family disagreements happen. Let's have lunch this week, just the two of us. Talk things through like adults." A pause. "There's no need to involve lawyers. We're family. I'm sure we can work something out that's fair to everyone." Another pause and then the hook. "Call me back, sweetheart. I love you." I deleted the message. I had heard that tone before, Margaret's "let's be reasonable" voice. It always preceded a new manipulation, a new angle of attack. "Let's talk" meant, "let me convince you to do what I want." Fair to everyone meant fair to everyone except Catherine. Not this time. Thursday morning, someone knocked on my apartment door. Not the tentative knock of a neighbor or delivery person, an aggressive, demanding knock. I checked the peephole. Derek stood in the hallway, looking like he hadn't changed clothes since Sunday. Unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, the polished salesman veneer completely stripped away. I considered not opening the door, then curiosity won. "Can I come in?" he asked. I blocked the doorway with my body. "No, say what you need to say." Derek glanced down the hallway, as if afraid of being seen. "Look, Catherine, I know things got out of hand at the dinner." Out of hand? But we're all adults here. We can work something out. He shifted into his salesman mode, the smooth voice and reasonable tone that had probably closed hundreds of car deals. "What if I cut you in? The house sale, you take a third instead of the $50,000 we originally offered. That's over $100,000, Catherine. Cash." I stared at him. This man, my sister's husband, the father of my nephew, was standing at my door offering me money that wasn't his to give, to sign away a claim he knew was legitimate. "Let me understand," I said. "You want me to take a bribe to sign away my legal rights. It's not a bribe to a house that should have been mine in the first place, while you're still lying to your wife about your girlfriend and your debts." Derek's face tightened. "I don't know what you think you know. I know enough." I started to close the door. His hand shot out to stop it. "You're making a mistake, Catherine. You don't want us as enemies." I met his eyes, held them. "I've had you as family for 16 years, Derek. Enemies might actually be an improvement." I pushed the door closed, locked it, walked away. Through the door, I heard his voice, quieter now, almost threatening. "You have no idea what you've started, Catherine. No idea." His footsteps retreated down the hallway. A moment later, the elevator dinged. I stood in my apartment, heart steady, mind clear. They kept telling me I would regret this. But the only thing I regretted was waiting so long. Thursday evening brought a different kind of knock. Softer, tentative, nothing like Derek's aggressive pounding. I checked the peephole and opened the door immediately. Ethan stood in the hallway, backpack over his shoulder, looking lost and young and completely out of place. "Hey, Aunt Catherine," his voice was small. "Mom dropped me at Grandma's house. She said she needed space to process. Grandma's on the phone screaming at some lawyer. I didn't know where else to go. I stepped aside. Come in." He shuffled past me, looking around my apartment like he had never seen it before. In a way he hadn't, not like this, not as a refuge from the chaos of his own family. I made him a sandwich. We sat at my small kitchen table and I let him eat before asking questions. "Are you okay?" Ethan shrugged, a teenager's armor against vulnerability. "Everything's falling apart. Dad won't come home. Mom cries all the time. Grandma says it's all your fault." He looked up at me, searching my face. "Is it? Your fault? What do you think?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I think you just stopped pretending. Everyone else has been pretending for years. About money, about Dad, about everything. You just stopped. That's pretty perceptive for 16. I've been watching for a long time. The way they talk about you. The way they take your money and then act like you're the problem." He shook his head. "I knew it was wrong. I just didn't say anything." "You're 16, Ethan. It wasn't your job to say anything." "But you noticed. That matters." His eyes were wet. He looked away quickly, embarrassed by the emotion. "I don't want to be like them, Aunt Catherine." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Then don't be. You get to choose who you become. No matter what happens with the rest of us, that's your choice." He nodded, wiping his eyes with his sleeve. "If you ever need somewhere to go," I said, "somewhere quiet, my door is open. I mean that. You're not your mother. You're not your father. You're you. And from what I've seen, that's someone worth being." For the first time since he had arrived, Ethan smiled. Friday came, and with it, the deadline for the house sale. My phone was silent for the first time all week. I imagined the scene playing out in real estate offices and living rooms, the agent delivering bad news, the buyer withdrawing their offer, Taylor and Derek's desperate hopes collapsing. At 5:47 p.m., a text arrived from an unknown number. "This is Brad Chen, Harrington Realty. Your family's property listing at 47 Maple Lane has been withdrawn due to title complications. Please contact our office if you have questions." I didn't respond. I didn't have questions. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my balcony, watching the sun set over Hartford. Within minutes, my phone erupted with notifications. Taylor, "I hope you're happy." Margaret, "You've destroyed everything we built." Derek, "Nothing." He was probably calculating his next move or running to Amy Chen for comfort. I turned off my phone. The wine was good. The silence was better. This was what freedom felt like, I realized. Not joy, not yet. But absence. The absence of obligation, of guilt, of the constant weight of their expectations. I had forgotten what it felt like to carry only myself. Saturday morning, I was picking out apples at the grocery store when I looked up and saw my father. Donald stood in the produce section, looking lost and out of place. He was holding a cantaloupe like he had never seen one before, clearly uncertain what to do with himself in a grocery store without Margaret commanding his movements. He saw me at the same moment. For a long second, neither of us moved. Then he walked toward me slowly, carefully, like approaching something fragile. "Katie." "Dad. Can we talk, please? Just 5 minutes." I considered. This was different from Taylor or Derek. No aggression, no manipulation, no salesman tactics. Just an old man who looked like he had finally woken up from a long sleep. 5 minutes. We found a quiet corner near the bakery, away from other shoppers. "I've left your mother," he said. I stared at him. "What?" "I'm staying at the Marriott. Have been since Wednesday. I packed a bag while she was on the phone with the lawyer and just left." "Dad, I can't do it anymore, Katie." His voice cracked. "I can't watch her manipulate and control and destroy. I can't pretend everything is fine when our family is in ruins. I can't be the man who sits in silence while his daughter is called useless trash." He looked older than I had ever seen him, but also somehow lighter. Like a weight had been lifted. "I should have left 30 years ago. I was a coward. I chose peace over truth, and there was never any peace anyway, just the absence of screaming." "Why now?" I asked. "After all these years?" His eyes met mine, wet with tears. "Because you showed me it was possible. You stood up in that dining room and told the truth, and the sky didn't fall. You showed me that the truth doesn't kill you." He took a shaky breath. "The lies were killing me, Katie. I just didn't see it until you spoke." I didn't know what to say. My father, silent, compliant, invisible for my entire life, had finally found his voice. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said. "I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know. What you did at that dinner was the bravest thing I've ever seen anyone do." He reached out and took my hand. His grip was trembling but firm. "I'm proud of you, Katie. I should have said that years ago, decades ago, but I'm saying it now." I squeezed his hand back, feeling something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something. "It's a start, Dad." He nodded, accepting that. A start is more than I deserve. We stood there for a moment, father and daughter, surrounded by bread and pastries and the ordinary sounds of a Saturday morning. The world continued around us, indifferent to the small revolution happening in the bakery aisle. I had set out to tell the truth. I hadn't intended to destroy everything, but the truth, once spoken, has its own momentum. Over the next 3 months, I would watch my family fall apart completely. The foreclosure, the divorce, the stroke that would finally silence my mother's manipulations. And through it all, I would learn the hardest lesson of my life. You cannot save people who refuse to save themselves. All you can do is save yourself, and hope that's enough. I woke in a different bedroom than the one I had known for years. Not my old studio apartment with its cramped windows and view of the parking lot. This was a condo on the top floor of a building overlooking the Connecticut River. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, painting golden rectangles on the hardwood floors. The space was clean, modern, and most importantly, mine. 3 months since the dinner that changed everything. I lay still for a moment, listening to the quiet. No frantic phone calls, no demands disguised as emergencies, no guilt-laden voicemails waiting to ambush me before my first cup of coffee. Just the soft hum of the city waking up and the distant cry of gulls over the river. 3 months ago, I was eating ramen to afford my family's lifestyle. Now I was drinking good coffee in a home I actually owned, watching the sun rise over water that sparkled like scattered diamonds. The math had been simple once I stopped pretending it was complicated. Without $2,000 a month flowing to Glastonbury, I could afford to live, really live, not just survive. I checked my phone, a habit I was learning to break. No messages from Margaret, no demands from Taylor. I had blocked them both 2 months ago, after the 20th attempt to guilt me back into the fold. The silence used to feel like amputation, phantom limbs aching where connections used to be. Now it felt like healing. In 3 months, everything had changed. Not because I did anything dramatic after that dinner, I simply stopped. stopped paying, stopped showing up, stopped pretending that my family loved me in any way that mattered. And without me holding the pieces together, the elaborate construction they had built on my labor collapsed completely. Turns out I wasn't the useless one after all. The financial dominoes fell exactly as I had predicted. Without my monthly contributions, the mortgage bounced in the first month, then the second. The bank sent notices, then warnings, then a foreclosure letter. Margaret tried to refinance, but her credit score had been destroyed by years of living beyond her means. Grandma Eleanor's house remained in legal limbo. My challenge to the deed transfer was still pending, and no sale could proceed until the dispute was resolved. The buyer, who had offered $415,000, withdrew when the title complications became clear. Taylor and Derek's emergency cash infusion evaporated before it ever arrived. Derek's exposure came 2 months after the dinner, and it came from an unexpected source. Amy Chen got tired of waiting, tired of secret hotel rooms and borrowed time, tired of a married man who kept promising to leave his wife but never did. She posted on social media, nothing explicit, nothing that could get her sued, but clear enough for anyone paying attention. Photos of Derek at restaurants he had claimed were business dinners. Hints about men who promise everything and deliver nothing. A passive-aggressive timeline of their relationship that left very little to the imagination. Taylor's friends saw it first, then Taylor saw it. The affair became public knowledge in Glastonbury within 48 hours. But the affair was only the beginning of Derek's unraveling. Taylor discovered something worse as she dug through their finances, looking for evidence of his betrayal. Derek owed Amy Chen money, $20,000 he had borrowed for business investments that never materialized. He had been funding his mistress while crying poor to his wife, while accepting money from the sister-in-law he despised, while scheming to sell a house that wasn't his. The car salesman had sold everyone a lie. I learned most of this from Ethan, who texted me updates like dispatches from a war zone. Mom found out Dad borrowed money from his girlfriend. She threw a lamp at him. A week later, they're getting divorced. Mom keeps saying it's all your fault. I didn't respond to that part. Some delusions weren't worth correcting. Taylor filed for divorce within 2 weeks of Amy's posts. The proceedings revealed more debts than anyone had imagined. Credit cards maxed in Derek's name alone. A second mortgage he had taken out without telling Taylor. Loans from friends who were now demanding repayment. Their house had negative equity. The golden child was about to be penniless. The news about Margaret came 6 weeks after the dinner. My phone rang with Donald's number. We had maintained careful, limited contact since our conversation in the grocery store. I almost didn't answer. Old habits die hard. "Katie, it's your mother." His voice was strained, frightened. "She's in the hospital." My stomach dropped despite everything. "What happened?" "Stroke. They say it's mild, but she can't speak properly. One side of her face." He couldn't finish the sentence. I sat with the information for a long moment. My first instinct was familiar, almost comforting in its predictability. Rush to the hospital, fix everything, be the dutiful daughter who shows up no matter what, take charge, make it better, absorb the crisis like I had absorbed every crisis before. Then I caught myself. Why? What would that accomplish? Margaret had called me useless trash in front of my entire family. She had stolen my inheritance, lied about me for years, enabled Taylor's exploitation of my resources. She had never once apologized, never acknowledged what she had done. This was exactly how they pulled you back in. The emergency, the guilt, the obligation that never ended. I went anyway, not for Margaret, but for myself. I needed to see. I needed to know. I needed to close a chapter. The hospital room was small and beige and smelled like antiseptic. Margaret lay in the bed, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. One side of her face drooped slightly, and when she turned her head and saw me, something flickered in her eyes. Hope, maybe, or calculation. Even now, I couldn't tell the difference. "You came." Her speech was slurred but understandable. "I came to see if you were okay." "You are." "Stay, we need to talk." I shook my head. No, Mom, we really don't. Everything that's happened. She struggled with the words, whether from the stroke or from the weight of what she was trying to say. It's killing me, Catherine. I looked at my mother, diminished now, stripped of the commanding presence that had controlled our family for decades. Part of me wanted to feel sympathy. Part of me searched for the love I had always wanted to feel. I found neither. What's killing you, Mom, is the consequences of your own choices. You stole from me. You lied about me. You chose Taylor over and over again, and you called me useless when I was the only one holding this family together. I picked up my purse. I'm sorry you're sick. I hope you recover. But I can't save you anymore. I can't be the person who fixes everything while being told I'm worth nothing. Catherine, goodbye, Mom. I walked out without looking back. In the hallway, Donald was waiting. Thank you for coming, he said. I didn't come for her, Dad. I came for me, to know I could face her and walk away. He nodded slowly, like he understood. Maybe he finally did. 3 weeks after the dinner, my boss had called me into his office with news I hadn't expected. The VP position in New York, it's been filled, he said. But we have something else, Director of Financial Analysis, here in Hartford. You'd be running the department. The position I had turned down 3 years ago, the career advancement I had sacrificed to stay close to a family that didn't deserve my sacrifice. This time I said yes without hesitation. The promotion came with a significant raise. Combined with the money I was no longer sending to Glastonbury, I found myself in a financial position I had never imagined. I went apartment hunting, not out of necessity, but out of desire. For the first time in my life, I was choosing where to live based on what I wanted, not what I could barely afford. I found the condo on my third viewing. Top floor, river view, hardwood floors throughout, a balcony where I could drink my morning coffee and watch the boats drift past. I signed the lease the same day. Moving in felt like shedding a skin I had worn for 48 years. I bought furniture I actually liked, a deep blue sofa, a dining table with enough seats for friends, artwork that spoke to me instead of hand-me-downs and clearance specials. I framed photographs, Carol at my birthday dinner, the first birthday anyone had celebrated with me in years. Ethan's school picture, which he had texted me with a shy request to maybe keep it somewhere. I adopted a cat from the shelter, a gray tabby named Luna who demanded nothing but presence. She curled up beside me every evening, purring contentedly, asking for nothing I couldn't easily give. For the first time in my adult life, my home reflected who I was, and I was finally starting to discover who that might be. The trip to Tuscany was Carol's idea. You've never taken a real vacation, she said over coffee one afternoon. In all the years I've known you, not once. I've been busy. You've been exploited. There's a difference. She set down her cup with the decisive click of someone who had made up her mind. I'm booking flights. You're coming with me. 10 days in Italy. No arguments. I almost said no. The old instincts were still there, the voice that said vacations were frivolous, that money should be saved for emergencies, that I didn't deserve rest. Then I thought, who would stop me? Who would need me? Who would make me feel guilty for choosing myself? No one. Not anymore. I booked the flights that night. 10 days in Tuscany changed something in me. Florence with its Renaissance treasures, Siena with its medieval towers, the countryside with its rolling hills and ancient vineyards, wine tastings where no one knew my name or my history, wandering cobblestone streets with no schedule, no obligations, no one depending on me for anything. One evening, sitting on a terrace overlooking a valley of olive groves, Carol asked the question I had been avoiding. How does it feel, being free? The sun was setting, painting the hills in shades of gold and amber. I held a glass of Chianti and searched for honest words. Strange. Like I'm waiting for someone to tell me I'm doing it wrong. Like any minute now the phone will ring with an emergency I have to solve. That's the conditioning, It takes time to trust your own peace. Does it ever go away? The guilt? Carol smiled, the smile of someone who had walked this road before me. Mostly. Some days it whispers. You learn not to listen. I watched the light fade over the Tuscan hills and understood something I had been too busy to see before. I had been so focused on keeping everyone else afloat that I had never learned to swim myself. Now, at 48, I was finally learning. Better late than never. On the flight home, I found myself thinking about the future. Not with dread, but with something unfamiliar. Curiosity, anticipation. What else had I denied myself? What else was waiting? When the plane landed in Hartford, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades. Excitement. For the first time in my life, my future was my own. I had no idea what I would do with it. That uncertainty wasn't scary anymore. It was freedom. The letter arrived 2 weeks after I returned from Italy. I found it in my mailbox. Handwritten address in familiar script, Margaret's. No return address, as if anonymity could provide deniability. I almost threw it away unopened, but something made me hesitate. Closure, maybe. Or curiosity about what manipulation she would attempt this time. I sat on my balcony, Luna curled in my lap, and opened the envelope. 2 pieces of paper inside, one typed, one handwritten. Margaret's letter was typed, formal, almost businesslike, despite the circumstances. Dear Catherine, I am writing to inform you of our family's situation. The house is in foreclosure. The bank has given us 60 days. Taylor's divorce is draining what little resources remain. My medical bills continue to mount. Insurance covers so little these days. The familiar litany of woes, the setup for the ask. We are your family. Whatever has happened between us, that fundamental truth doesn't change. I would think, given your comfortable position, you could find it in your heart to help us through this difficult time. And then the line that made me laugh out loud, startling Luna from her nap. We are willing to forgive you for the scene at dinner if you will help us with the deposit for a new apartment. We can put this unpleasantness behind us and move forward as a family. Forgive me. They were willing to forgive me. For telling the truth. For stopping the exploitation. For finally refusing to be their ATM. Even now, facing ruin, Margaret couldn't admit fault. The letter was an invoice disguised as an olive branch, a demand wrapped in the language of reconciliation. But it was the second piece of paper that made me pause. Handwritten, in shaky script I recognized as Donald's. Just a few lines. Catherine, I'm sorry, for everything. I should have protected you, and I didn't. That failure is something I will carry for the rest of my life. I don't expect your forgiveness. I just needed you to say this, finally, in writing. I love you. I always have. And I'm proud of the woman you've become. Dad. I read his note 5 times. It wasn't enough to fix 48 years, but it was more than I had ever received from him before. I sat with both letters for a long time. The sun set. Luna purred. The river turned orange, then purple, then black. My first instinct was to burn Margaret's letter. Dramatic, satisfying, final. I even lit a candle, held the paper near the flame, watched the edges begin to curl. Then I stopped. Burning it would be a reaction. A response to her provocation. It would give the letter power it didn't deserve. Instead, I folded both letters carefully. I placed them in a box, the same wooden box that held Grandma Eleanor's letter, the one I had found hidden among worthless keepsakes. All the letters that mattered together. Not as trophies, not as weapons, as evidence of who they were and who I had been. Someday, maybe I would throw the box away. But not yet. The wound was still too fresh to pretend it had never existed. I didn't write back to Margaret. I didn't send money. I didn't call or explain or defend myself. Silence was my answer. And silence was enough. A month later, my phone buzzed with Ethan's name. Hey, Aunt Catherine, I made a decision. Tell me. I'm applying to colleges out of state. California, maybe, or somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. Somewhere far away. How does that feel? Scary, but right. A pause. Mom's furious. Says I'm abandoning the family. I could imagine Taylor's reaction. The guilt deployment, the accusations, the tears, real and manufactured. What did you tell her? I told her I'm choosing myself. Like you taught me. The words hit me somewhere deep. Not painful, but profound. This was the legacy I hadn't known I was building. Not money or property or status. But permission. The permission to choose yourself, passed from one generation to the next. I'm proud of you, Ethan. Thanks. Whatever I need, applications, essays, someone to talk to, can I call you? Always. My door is open. You're not your mother, Ethan. You're not your father. You get to be something new. That means a lot, Aunt Catherine. I smiled at my phone after he hung up. Ethan was breaking the cycle. He had seen the pattern, the taking, the manipulation, the entitlement, and he was choosing differently. Maybe that was the real victory. Not defeating my family, but showing one member that another way was possible. 3 months after the dinner, my life was unrecognizable. New home, new title, new sense of who I was and what I deserved. The family that once consumed my every thought now felt distant, not forgotten, but contained. Like a storm observed through thick glass, still visible but no longer capable of harm. I didn't know what came next. I hadn't decided about Grandma Eleanor's house, whether to pursue the legal challenge or let it go, whether justice was worth the cost of more years entangled with people who had hurt me. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever I decided, it would be my choice, made for my reasons, on my terms. And that was enough. 6 months had passed since the dinner that changed everything, and I stood on my balcony watching the Connecticut River shimmer under a spring morning sun. The trees along the riverbank had exploded into bloom, dogwoods and cherry blossoms painting the landscape in shades of pink and white. New life after a long winter. Luna wound between my ankles, purring her morning greeting, and I reached down to scratch behind her ears. 6 months. In 6 months, I had rebuilt my entire existence from the ground up. The woman who had walked into that dining room in Glastonbury, the invisible daughter, the family ATM, the one they called useless trash, she was gone. In her place stood someone I was still learning to recognize. Someone who owned her own home, ran her own department, made her own choices without asking permission from people who had never deserved that power. I mentally cataloged my life as it stood now, a job I was proud of, colleagues who respected my contributions, a title I had earned twice over, a home that felt like sanctuary rather than obligation, every piece of furniture chosen by me, every photograph on the walls representing someone who actually cared about my existence. A friendship with Carol that grew deeper with every passing month. A nephew who texted me about college acceptance letters, who called me for advice, who was breaking free from the same patterns that had nearly destroyed me. And peace. Actual, sustainable peace. What I didn't have anymore. Sunday dinners filled with criticism, obligatory phone calls that always ended in requests for money, the constant drain of other people's manufactured emergencies. I had thought their absence would feel like loss. Instead, it felt like space, room to breathe, room to become whoever I was meant to be. They called me useless. But look at where we all ended up. My phone buzzed while I was getting ready for work. Donald's number. We had texted occasionally over the past months, brief exchanges, nothing heavy, careful steps on unfamiliar ground. He was still at the Marriott, then a small apartment in West Hartford. Still finding his way after 50 years of marriage to a woman who had controlled his every move. This message was different. Katie, can we meet? Just coffee. There are things I need to say, in person. I stared at the screen for a long moment. I had seen my father only once since the grocery store encounter, a brief, awkward lunch where we talked about nothing important. We had maintained a careful distance, Two people who shared DNA and decades of history but had never really known each other. Was I ready for more? I thought about what Carol had told me. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you. It's about choosing not to carry the weight anymore. I thought about Donald's handwritten note in the letter that accompanied Margaret's demands. I should have protected you and I didn't. Maybe I was strong enough now. Maybe I could afford to listen. Saturday morning, I typed back. The cafe by the river. 10 a.m. His reply came within seconds. I'll be there. Thank you, Katie. I arrived at the cafe early, intentionally. I wanted to choose the table, control the space, have time to settle before whatever was coming. The morning was warm for early spring, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, the smell of fresh coffee and baked goods filling the air. I ordered my usual latte and claimed a table by the window where I could watch both the door and the river. My heartbeat was steady. I wasn't nervous. I was curious. Whatever my father needed to say, I was ready to hear it. Donald arrived at exactly 10 o'clock. He looked different than I remembered. Older, certainly, but somehow lighter, too. The permanent hunch in his shoulders had softened. He wore clothes I didn't recognize, probably purchased for himself for the first time in decades. When he spotted me, he hesitated at the door, gathering courage, then walked over with careful steps. Katie. He didn't try to hug me. He knew better than to assume that kind of intimacy. Dad, sit down. He ordered coffee from the passing server, and we sat in silence for a moment. The weight of decades hung between us. All the words never spoken, all the defenses never mounted, all the times he had chosen peace over protection. I've been practicing what to say, he finally said, for weeks, and now that I'm here, none of it seems right. Then don't practice. Just say what's true. He took a breath. His hands trembled around his coffee cup, age or nerves or both. I was a coward, Katie. My whole life I was a coward. He looked down at the table, unable to meet my eyes. I watched your mother control everything. You, Taylor, me, the entire family narrative. I knew what she was doing. I knew about the money you sent every month. I knew about the will, about your grandmother's real intentions. My jaw tightened. You knew about Grandma's house? I knew. I signed the papers your mother put in front of me. I didn't question, didn't fight, didn't stand up for what was right. His voice cracked. I told myself it was easier that way, that it would all work out somehow. But easier for who? Not for you. Never for you. The confession landed like stones dropped into still water, ripples spreading outward, disturbing everything. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. Old, yellowed, the edges soft with age. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Grandma Eleanor's elegant script, my name written across the front. Your grandmother gave me this 30 years ago, Donald said. She told me, give this to Catherine when she needs it most. I was supposed to give it to you when your mother started being your mother. He slid the envelope across the table. I never did. I was too afraid of what Margaret would do if she found out. His eyes were wet when he looked up at me. I'm not afraid anymore. My hands shook as I picked up the envelope. Sealed for 3 decades. My grandmother's voice preserved across time waiting for me. I opened it carefully, as if the paper might dissolve at my touch. My dearest Catherine, the letter began, and I could hear her voice in every word. If you're reading this, it means your father finally found his courage. Or you found your own, which is more likely knowing you. I've watched you since you were a little girl. I've seen how hard you try, how much you give, how little you ask for in return. You remind me of myself at your age, before I learned that giving everything away leaves you with nothing. I want you to know something important, something I should have told you while I was still alive to say it. You are enough, exactly as you are. You don't have to earn love, buy affection, or prove your worth through sacrifice. Anyone who requires that of you doesn't deserve you. The house on Maple Lane is meant for you, not because you earned it, but because you're the one who will use it wisely, who will honor what it represents. But more than property, more than inheritance, I leave you this truth. You have permission to choose yourself. You have permission to walk away from anyone who makes you feel small. You have permission to be happy. I love you, sweetheart. More than I ever said. More than you probably knew. Choose yourself, Catherine. It's not too late. It's never too late. All my love, Grandma Eleanor. The tears came before I could stop them. Not grief, release. My grandmother had seen me, believed in me, left me permission I didn't know I needed, waiting 30 years for the moment I would need it most. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it in my purse. When I looked up, Donald was watching me, his own eyes streaming. Why now, Dad? Why give this to me now? Because you did what I never could. You stood up and told the truth. He wiped his face with a napkin. You showed me it was possible to stop pretending. And I realized, if I died still holding on to this letter, I would never forgive myself. The harder question rose to my lips before I could stop it. Where were you all those years? When Mom was tearing me down, when Taylor took everything, when I was paying your bills while being called selfish? Donald didn't look away. He owed me that much. I was hiding, behind your mother, behind silence, behind my own fear. His voice was steady now, accepting the weight of his confession. I told myself staying quiet kept the peace, but there was never any peace, just the absence of screaming. I'm not asking you to forgive me, he continued. I haven't earned that. I don't know if I ever can. I just needed you to know. I saw you. I always saw you. I was just too weak to say so. I sat with his words for a long moment. The cafe bustled around us, other people's conversations, other people's lives, while we sat in our small bubble of truth. I don't know if I can forgive you, Dad, I finally said. I don't know if I want to, but I can acknowledge you. For finally speaking, for giving me the letter, for showing up today. That's more than I deserve. Maybe, but it's a start. After the cafe, we walked along the river path in silence. The morning had warmed, spring unfolding around us in shades of green and gold. Joggers passed, dogs barked, children chased each other along the water's edge. Normal life continuing its eternal rhythm. Your mother is in a nursing home now, Donald said eventually. The house is gone, foreclosed last month. Taylor won't speak to her. I absorbed this information. The woman who had controlled everything, now alone, stripped of power. She asks about you, Donald added quietly. Every time I visit. I shook my head. I'm not ready for that, maybe never. I understand. We walked a few more steps before I asked the question that had been forming since I'd read my grandmother's letter. What do you want to do about Grandma's house? The legal challenge is still pending. Donald was quiet for a moment. That's not my decision to make. What do you want? I thought about it. Really thought about it for the first time since the dinner. The legal battle, the years in court, the cost and the exhaustion. Justice, maybe, at the end of it. But at what price? I'm going to drop the challenge. The words surprised me even as I said them. Not because Taylor deserves the house. She doesn't. But I don't want to spend the next 3 years fighting over the past. The past has taken enough from me already. Donald nodded slowly. That sounds like wisdom. We stopped at a bench overlooking the water. Boats drifted past, their sails catching the spring breeze. Dad, I don't know what our relationship looks like going forward. It won't be Sunday dinners and pretending everything is fine. I don't want pretending anymore. I've had a lifetime of pretending. Then we'll figure it out. Slowly, honestly, no more hiding. That's all I ask, Katie. A chance to do things differently. That evening I sat on my balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Luna was curled in my lap, and both letters, Eleanor's original and the one I'd received that morning, lay on the table beside me. My phone buzzed with a text from Carol. "How did it go?" "Complicated," I typed back, "but good. I'll tell you everything tomorrow." I thought about what I had lost over the past 6 months. A mother who never loved me the way I needed. A sister who only saw me as a resource. Decades of trying to earn something that was never for sale. And what had I gained? A father who finally found his voice. Imperfect, late, but real. A nephew breaking free from the same patterns. A best friend who showed me what genuine support looked like. A career that valued my contributions. A home that reflected who I actually was. And most importantly, myself. I looked at Grandma Eleanor's letter again. You have permission to choose yourself. For 48 years, I had waited for that permission from my family, from my mother, my sister, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. It never came. It was never going to come. So I gave it to myself. And it turned out that was the only permission that ever mattered. The next morning, I woke before dawn. I lay in bed listening to the city wake up. Distant traffic, birdsong, the soft rhythm of a world that kept turning regardless of my small dramas. No anxiety, no dread, no mental list of other people's problems to solve. Just the day ahead, full of possibility. I made my coffee, sat on the balcony, and opened the journal Carol had given me months ago. I had resisted at first. Writing felt self-indulgent, navel-gazing. But slowly, it had become a way of making sense of everything that had happened. I wrote, 6 months ago, I was invisible, the family ATM, the scapegoat, the daughter who was never good enough, no matter how much she gave. Today, I am director of financial analysis. I am a homeowner. I am a traveler, a cat mom, a loyal friend. I am Ethan's safe harbor. I am my grandmother's legacy, finally claimed. I am enough, exactly as I am, and I am no longer waiting for anyone else to see it. I closed the journal and picked up Margaret's letter, the "we're willing to forgive you" letter that still made me shake my head in disbelief. I didn't burn it. That would give it too much power. Instead, I folded it carefully and placed it in the wooden box with Eleanor's letters. Not gone, not forgotten, just contained. The past no longer ran my life. But I didn't need to pretend it hadn't happened. I thought about all the women who might be where I was 3 years ago, paying someone else's bills, absorbing someone else's cruelty, giving and giving and giving to people who only know how to take, waiting for love that never comes, for recognition that's never offered, for a thank you that's never said. If you're one of those women, I want you to know something. It's not selfish to stop drowning yourself to keep others afloat. It's not cruel to tell the truth after years of swallowing lies. It's not too late to choose yourself. Not at 30, not at 48, not ever. My grandmother wrote, "Choose yourself, Catherine." My mother said, "You're useless trash." One voice told me I was nothing. One voice told me I was enough. I finally know which voice was right. And I finally know which voice I'm going to listen to for the rest of my life. They called me useless. They called me trash. But look at where we all ended up. I have a home I own, a job I love, peace I built with my own 2 hands. And them? They're still cleaning up the mess they made while I was busy being useless. Sometimes the trash takes itself out. And sometimes it turns out the trash was never the problem. The people holding the garbage bags were. So that's my story. All of it. The lies, the money, the silence, and finally, the truth. The moment my mother called me useless trash, and the moment I proved her wrong by walking away. I want to ask you something, and I really want your honest answer. Was I wrong? For exposing them? For stopping the payments? For choosing myself after 48 years of choosing everyone else? Or did I do what any woman in my position should have done a long time ago? Tell me what you think. Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you've been through something similar, if you've been the family ATM or the scapegoat or the one everyone takes for granted, share your story too. Because I know I'm not alone, and neither are you. If this story touched something in you, If it made you think about your own family, your own boundaries, your own worth, please hit that like button. It tells me these stories matter. It tells me to keep sharing them. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories about women who stop waiting for permission and start choosing themselves, subscribe to this channel and click that notification bell. That way, you won't miss the next one. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's never too late to choose yourself. No matter what anyone calls you, no matter how long you've been invisible, your story isn't over. It's just beginning. See you in the next one. This story is fictionalized for dramatic effect.